meeting tonight, I think.
Red Sox, 809.
Oh, it's the Red Sox. Yes, that's where everybody is. Good. Okay. Focus. Good evening. It is now 7 o'clock, and I will open the Wellfleet Board of Selectmen's public meeting Tuesday, October 23rd of 2018. We will begin with announcements, open session, and public comment. Are there any from the board? Hearing none. Oh, okay. Kathleen, I didn't hear your hand.
Good evening, everybody. Wellfleet Preservation Hall has commenced work on the addition to the building. This work will be taking place on the side of the building that's closest to the bank. Passers-by will note the construction fencing that went up yesterday, Monday. It's their hope to have the project completed by April 2019. Stop in or stop by and wish them well, or ask questions should you have them. Thank you.
And I would like to announce that Radu will be changing jobs and moving to the Executive Director of the Provincetown Chamber of Commerce. We're very sad to see him go, and we will miss him. He will do great at that job. That's what he was educated to do. So we wish you the best of luck, and come visit anytime.
Will do. Thank you.
Janet?
Helen?
And to add to that, hello out there in TV land, we're looking for someone to fill Radu's position. It's an exciting job, and you're actually Operation Central in the town of Wellfleet. So think of applying if you have the skills.
And I believe the job description's up on the website?
Yes, it's posted online.
Online. Okay, thank you. Chief Facette?
Yes, two quick things. The first thing, I want to know.
Talking to, oh,
Are we on today?
No, we got an,
It was fixed this afternoon, so it is working.
That's been one, two, yes, no? I can yell, but that's not good things. There we go, all right. Two quick things. First, I want to know if the Board of Selectmen is interested in holding a hearing for the traffic bylaws to address the intersection of Bank and Commercial Street. People have asked if that should be a stop sign there, a yield sign there. No action by the board, but I didn't know if you were interested in setting up a meeting down the road so we can discuss this and what would be possible alternatives. So that, again, that's a regulatory thing that falls to you. I can do informational.
I think, I know for myself, I think it's a very good idea, and I've heard from people it's a good idea. How does the board feel about that?
I agree, and I think we can bring it up later at future concerns. Get it on the agenda.
Yeah. Okay,
I'll say
Thank
more
you.
about it then. I'll say more about it then.
okay.
I'll be gone. The Red Sox will be over.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to answer it now. Okay.
The second thing is that Oyster Fest has come and gone. A successful weekend. I would like to thank the cooperation of the police, the fire department, all the people that worked together. Mike Hurley, lieutenant for the police department, had oversight of the event. Captain Joe Capello with the fire department had oversight. We had wonderful men and women of each department working. I think we worked well with the SPAC group in the whole weekend, and for the amount of people and amount of activity that happened that weekend, it was a success. Lieutenant Hurley did give you a quick overview in your packets. As in the past, if you do wish to have an agenda item, he will come in and we can discuss it further, but I think it sort of summarizes with the event of the weekend and things like that. So it was a success. I think 18 is the number now, so getting ready for 19.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other announcements from the audience? Okay, thank you. Moving on to use of town property, we have Della Spring from About Mayo Beach. Do you want to come up to the mic or the table, please? Doesn't matter. Can you hear me? Yes. Very good. So are there any questions or comments from the board?
No.
Yeah, I have a question.
Okay.
And maybe in the future, this could be included. I spent 20 minutes, Town of Wellfleet, 20 minutes looking for our current fee schedule for this kind of thing, and I couldn't find it. So before we make a motion, I'd like to ask through you, Ms. Spring, what did we charge you last year?
I believe there was a $50 application and then a $200 fee for the season.
Thank you. I think that in the future, it would be nice to have at least a reference of, A, what's in our fee schedule that we've already decided on, and B, what was paid last year when we get these motions, so that people like me who can't find pieces of paper.
No, I agreed, and I think somewhere last year, in what, I don't remember when, we, instead of, for the fee of $110, we decided to do $100 a month if it was an ongoing use of town property.
Yes.
That's how I remember it, so I'm glad you remembered it similarly. So,
So, Janet?
yep,
Question, on this page here, it does have a listing of a fee of $110.
right.
On the application.
And I think
part.
that is from,
Processing fee was 50,
right,
and last year's fee was 110.
Last year I paid $200.
yeah, so I don't,
So
I'm not
this is
sure
wrong.
who.
I know
filled
that
this.
previously, this is, I'm sorry, that was my 4th year, and prior to that, I paid 110, and then the past 2 years, I believe it was more.
Okay.
I know for sure last year it was 200.
Yeah, I think so too. So I think we agreed that it would be for the ongoing, ongoing classes or other events on town property, it would be the 100 per month. So then the fee would be $200, not $220. Is that good? Can I have a motion? Anybody, any further questions or from the audience? May I have a motion?
I move to approve the use of town property by Della Spring at Mayo Beach on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 8:30 a.m. to 9:45 a.m. from June 25th through September 5th, subject to the conditions, if any, as listed on the application, for a fee of $200.
Second.
All in favor? Motion passes. Thank you. And thank you for
Very much.
continuing to do this.
It's been great.
Yeah, seems like it.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Have a good winter. Okay, and then moving on to the use of town property by the Friends of the Wellfleet Library for their book fairs.
Nobody's here for that.
Yep. Any questions, comments from the audience or the board?
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is, in this case, there
We
is
waive the
no. Yeah, we waive the fee, but again, somewhere there is a listing of what is normal for this.
Well, I know
And,
Jean Mack has been on
Yeah.
vacation for
Okay.
2 weeks, and that's probably where
Yeah.
a bit of the,
and we waive the fee
Confusion.
because it's not for profit and it's town-oriented, so.
Yep.
Okay, I have a motion which had to be tidied up a bit, and I did check this with Denny O'Connell, who's
Good.
on the trustees. But is everybody done?
I think so.
Yeah. I move to approve the use of town property by the Friends of the Wellfleet Libraries Incorporated on the Town Hall lawn and in the driveway on the east side of Town Hall on July 7th, on Sunday, July 7th, with a rain date of July 14th, and on August 4th, with a rain date of August 11th, 2019, from 7 a.m. to 2:30 p.m., subject to conditions, if any, as listed on the application, for no fee.
Second?
All in favor?
All Sundays, July 6th.
And thank you for clarifying that, Helen.
Yeah,
It was,
okay.
2 Sundays?
That's it.
Here, Dan.
All right, moving on to discussion of wastewater.
Oh, goody.
Wastewater Management Authority, and the 208 plan.
Okay.
Good evening, good evening. Sorry we haven't been here the last couple of meetings, but we've been obviously trying to do a lot of work behind the scenes to make this meeting productive and get all the interested parties together. I guess I'll just begin by saying that on September 25th, in response to a number of things that had preceded it relative to discussions in terms of what we should do going forward, we had a great meeting with DEP, with Hillary, Emily Beebe, the Truro Health agent, so including one of our partners in ultimately the wastewater effort. Alex, myself, Brian Dudley, Scott Horsley, Erin Perry from the Commission, and Andrew Gottlieb from the Association for the Preservation of Cape Cod. Andrew also served as the executive director of the Cape Cod Water Protection Collaborative for a number of years and was instrumental in overseeing the ultimate adoption of the current 208 plan. So it's very helpful to have him at the meeting. In a nutshell, we came up with a number of action items to move the process forward. I think the highlight in terms of communicating to the board that really came out of the meeting was a very clear message from Brian Dudley that the town of Wellfleet has to have a clear sewer plan in place that has engineering cost estimates and a realistic plan such that he has a high level of confidence that should that plan need to be implemented, it could easily get out to engineering for ultimately to be bid, that it's a real backup option to our alternatives plan. And I think my impression anyway coming out of that meeting was that the regulators have given the town a lot of latitude to demonstrate alternatives and to develop lesser cost alternatives to meet our nitrogen requirements. But if we're not successful in doing that, if we don't produce the results in the watershed, the heavy hammer of a sewer system is very real for the town of Wellfleet. And that hammer looks like somewhere between $60 and $160 million. And that's not that doesn't even include the operating costs. So this is something that's been out there for some time. And I think my own personal perception of how this has sort of come to where we are today is that I believe the regulators feel very strongly that we show a good faith effort to put in place professional management of this overall activity, both the water system and the wastewater effort. There was some discussion in the meeting coming from both Brian and from Andrew Gottlieb that perhaps the idea of having one person was not enough, that we should be maybe looking at two or more people to staff this operation. And, my comment in the meeting was, well, if you're from the town of Orleans or Chatham or Barnstable or Plymouth or Mashpee or Falmouth, towns with significantly larger amounts of resources, and given the effort involved to implement these plans, that might make sense. But we don't have those types of resources. Our real goal is at least to start taking a first step and to take steps moving forward. And so I think that we did get agreement from the regulators in terms of that action plan. Brian had some very specific asks as far as making sure that the sewer system was very clearly engineered to a level that he's comfortable with it as part of our plan. That's going to take some time. And that we have a set of action plans relative to our comprehensive wastewater management plan to be able to put it in the Commission's MVP program, as we've been talking about for some time, so that would save us a huge amount of money if the runs can be done within the MVP model, and that we don't have to go back to MEP and have UMass Dartmouth or somebody else do models, which Brian raised as a possibility during the meeting. So I guess in essence, the regulators are being very proactive to try to help us save money, but they also have a backstop in terms of their legislative and regulatory authority to where they've got to be comfortable that we're meeting those thresholds.
And I think that I think we were very comfortable and excited to hear feedback from DEP through Brian, which we have not heard since we submitted the draft needs assessment in 2012. So that was a big step for us to really hear more or less any feedback, but really positive in our minds of saying, some constructive direction, saying, all right, well, we have what you guys have proposed in your alternatives. That's more or less okay as long as the numbers, go through get run and they look okay. But as long as you, he basically said, we didn't comment on your alternatives because we were waiting for the some type of final engineered build-out scope for your sewer system. And I actually asked him about how specific he wanted to see, and it wasn't an engine, wasn't down to, specific details in the engineer plan, but definitely looking at the whole town being picked up on sewer and not just the central district, right? And that shocked me as well. But this is how far back they the backstop needs to go. It needs to be a foolproof plan. If the alternatives don't meet their goals, then we need to have the fail-safe that picks up everything in town, and DEP will be covered and made kind of whole. So I think it was a great meeting, and moving forward, this is that's the direction we're headed in right now, and the time frame on this is realistically to be complete anywhere from 14 to 18 months, maybe 2 years, which was kind of depressing to hear that after how long it's been. However, at least we have some good direction, and we're already in kind of full stride here and hitting the ground running again. So, more or less, that's pretty much where we are right now.
Yeah. So I think we do have a good plan going forward. We have agreement with, and Erin apologized again for not being able to attend this meeting, and said, effectively, if there's any questions that come from the board that, that you would like the commission to answer, they're more than willing to do that. I'm happy to feed that back. The other thing that came out was, I think, given the uncertainty of where we are now and what we still need to do, the implementation of the plan through the WMA that was proposed previously by the Board of Selectmen, probably, I think it's very premature at this point. And the reasons are really just kind of cosmetic. I think if we have something that is on the books, for example, a WMA with 3 people, something very specific, I think that forecloses some of the options that might be available as we move through the process, as the consultant continues to look at this, as the commission continues to look at this, as DEP continues to look at this. I just don't think that we're in a place right now where that makes sense, that we have enough specificity to have something on the books that may or may not suit our needs. We clearly had a lot of discussions about this before, and a number at town meeting. But my feeling is the feeling of the group was that what was proposed doesn't make sense, and B, that it's probably premature.
So, okay, so anything on the 208 plan?
That was
Do you want to be
The
more
whole
specific?
thing? Yeah, I mean, any it hasn't been finalized, has it? No.
Well, the 208 plan, to be clear, the 208 plan is the plan developed by the Cape Cod Commission for regional compliance.
Right.
What that spells out is a set of objectives, tasks, things that the towns need to do, and technologies to propose a comprehensive wastewater management plan. Certain towns are much further along than we are. Some have sewer systems already, and they're fairly extensive.
Yeah.
So the 208 is just what the county had to submit and get approval through EPA in order to have a platform by which the towns can now get their local plans approved.
So to simplify this, because it is a very confusing thing, and this is part of the task that our committee, with coming back to the select board, is going to have to bring back to the town at large to help people understand. The 208 essentially approved the alternatives that we've proposed, using salt marsh restoration and oyster restoration, and accounting for these non-traditional nitrogen mitigation strategies. The 208 plan essentially got these approved through DEP, so we could now get these qualified. So when we go to DEP, that's when Brian said, hey, you guys this looks like this should work, as long as you have a fail-safe backstop of an engineered sewer, ready to go when or if this stuff ever does fail in the
So I thought Scott Horsley was working on updating the 208. Has he?
So he's working on updating our comprehensive plan, and our comprehensive plan needs to go through approval under the 208 framework.
Right.
Which will
So
take-
that's the real difference. It's just, we have our specific plan, and these are before you couldn't use alternatives.
Yeah.
So now they are within the framework, and there are regulatory guidelines to be able to approve them. That didn't exist before.
So where does that
So
stand
that's,
now?
so when we say we're going to run through these models, using the MVP model, it essentially means that we're going to take the nitrogen loading numbers that we proposed and run them through using the technologies that we've proposed, which are been approved by the 208 plan. That is running, that's what we mean when we say we're running those numbers through that model. So the input will equal the output, and that's a very complicated process. That's what initially the MEP was in place to do. And this is kind of the next generation of the MEP. And we're hoping we don't have to go back and deal with the MEP numbers and do that all over again, because that's kind of the old guard, and now we're moving on to the MVP model.
Yeah, so it would be about $100,000 if we had to go back and run things through the old model. The MVP was what the commission developed under the 208 plan to be able to provide a platform for the towns to come in and more easily run their technologies through a screening process to say, yes, this is in compliance, or no, you need to get more from something else. So that's really what it is. It's just, we need 10,000 kilograms a year of removal. They will certify that you've got a series of activities that will do that, and if they don't in fact do that, then you have to go to option A, B, C, or D that's further down the list.
So, yes, and I remember your numbers and your presentation on that. So where do we stand now?
So
That's my main question.
Yeah,
Where do
so
we stand
Scott's actually working with the commission. He's got our plan. He is putting it in the MVP format, and he is working with them now to certify what we've got for technology options.
yeah.
So at least for a baseline, assuming that we can, assuming that Brian agrees, assuming DEP agrees with the outputs, we would then have a plan plus a backup, and that would be our comprehensive plan.
Okay.
And the moving parts here are, if he's not comfortable and wants us to do additional MEP runs, it's a lot of money. And the other thing is, if we can't demonstrate to him that we've already done the engineering work to a point of that he's comfortable with, we might have to do additional engineering analysis or engineering estimates for a sewer system. So that's really where we are. One thing for Brian relative to the backup, and getting final runs with the commission's MVP model of our alternatives to show that we're in compliance.
And do we have any timeline for that in general?
That's why I said it's the 14 months to 18 to a year, but I think we were talking about getting this all submitted within about 8 to 9 months from now, and then it's in their hands, and that the remaining time was then kind of the back and forth, and then the end of that would be final approval. Then we start going on to the integration phase of implementation.
Okay.
And we'll also have feedback, obviously, sooner than that. Once he's
Okay,
done
yeah.
with his work in the next several months, he'll have done some model runs. We'll know Brian's either comfortable or he's not comfortable. So there'll be other pieces that come to play as we move along.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the board? Kathleen?
Do you plan on coming back to us on spring of 2019 with, the position for wastewater management?
Yeah, obviously, yes. In addition, we're going to have to do, I'd probably say, 3 public presentations that will have to, that are required for feedback, input. I think at least 3, because we'll have to, at least before the plan is finalized, and then 2 other ones, and possibly more. I'm not sure how that's going to look right now, but there's going to be a lot of public interaction here.
I want to impart upon you that you have a second opportunity to fill this position, and you weren't able to sell it to the public last spring. You get another chance at this, and we've got to nail it. We cannot go without having a person, a professional person, overlooking what we're gonna need to have going forward. So,
Point taken. Point taken.
do all that you can. Thank you.
Kathleen, sorry, Justina.
Clearly, we will have to me, it's pants first and then shoes, and the pants is getting the alternative technologies approved. And it's my understanding that Brian Dudley at the state, who's asked for the engineered sewer for the whole town, was not in favor of alternative technologies. Some people are not, by professional training, open, right? So I think it's critical that we get in the same boat and row in the same direction and get this approved, because we can't afford a sewer for Wellfleet, and apparently we don't really need it. So in terms of the hire, I know I've been passionately advocating it, but I think that we all want to be on the same team here. And if they're talking about 2 to 3 people, clearly we're going to need some volunteer help. And I know, Helen, you are a proponent of that working. And I just think we're going to have to be on the same team now and get this approved, get the support behind wastewater, and as a housekeeping matter, probably rescind the WMA so that there's clarity of who's in charge and who's driving the boat.
Janet?
Helen?
A number of questions. How much of the $500,000 the town meeting voted you to spend on doing what you've been doing, which is not over yet, has already been spent? How much is left?
Yeah, we're like 85% used up on that budget.
Okay. Second thing, representing myself as only myself and wanting to get some clarity, I had my second useful and careful conversation with Brian Dudley this afternoon, which I reported to Kurt before the meeting. And in other words, thank goodness that the meeting that Hillary wanted very much to have did happen on September 25th, okay? You listed the people who were there. I should add that Brian Dudley and Erin Perry were there on speakerphone.
Brian was on speaker.
Right, and who else was on speaker?
Scott.
Scott, okay. So that was good, and I wanted to know, I had no attitude. I just wanted to know more about what happened, because in fact, we got this memo, but we didn't really get a set of minutes, which is reasonable. It wasn't a committee or board meeting.
Yep.
And most of what was just reported by Kurt is also what Brian said. However, it was a little more nuanced, and he went into details with me. And I should say, before I continue, I've had contact with him over many years before, this phase of my life in public service. So we have good communication, and he seemed happy to hear from me, which is an issue. One of the things that he seemed to think, and I disabused him of this, both because it's in your draft 2014 plan and because of what I know is ongoing in the town through the Board of Health, also the CONSCOM, but mainly the Board of Health, is that he seemed to think that it was all being put on shellfish as an alternative way of mitigating pollution going into the watershed. And it's not. In fact, what's going on, never mind the 208 plan with the Board of Health, is piecemeal but constructively addressing wastewater issues all over town. And he and I had a whole exchange about the fact that because of the room tax, we are going to be getting funds that can be addressed specifically to dealing with wastewater. And what came out of the conversation that was very useful for me and confirmed what I had thought, which I always need confirmation from experts, is that one of the key things in the whole process for us, never mind the state agencies, is monitoring the monitoring of the process. And that is why the entity that Hillary and I worked on to have that in a continuum with professional help, namely the health conservation agent, who will have a great deal of information right at her fingertips, and the proper appointees, it's key that that be ongoing, that it not just be in one person's head, and particularly not in one person's head who can make no actual decisions. The decision makers in this situation can only be the Board of Health, the Conservation Commission, the enforcement agent for those matters, for those jurisdictions. And it's our role as the Select Board to make good appointments to such groups. And Justina and I call people on such groups different things. I call them special municipal employees. Other people call them volunteers. Yeah, sure, we're not paid, but the thing is that this is not a kind of, instead of a professional job. The people on the Board of Health and all the other regulatory boards and the, on-the-ground land use boards and committees are the bottom line. They're not a substitute for a professional. They need professional help. They need to use consultants. And above all, they need to be the deciders. And to have an underinformed, let's say, Board of Health trying to implement aspects of the 208 plan, as opposed to a Board of Health member on the 208 plan monitoring committee, which got called the wrong thing when we approved the charge. We called it the Wastewater Management Authority. It's not actually called that. It's called, what is it called? It's called the Waste Management. It's called something.
The technical designation is a water management agency, which is the town.
Thank you. Which is what it was being talked about.
Which is the town.
The second thing that was unclear to Brian, and it interests me that this was not clarified to him, is that this charge, which he had not seen, is not about what's happening right now. It's about being part of the plan as a specific reference to how the town, who is the agency that decides how to comply with this plan.
The town is the WMA.
Well, is that set of
by
initials
law,
right now, but
under
who
law.
on the town? Because right now, the town could refer to any one of a number of people or groups. And to be specific about how this is going to be handled, because to my mind, to have this 208 plan work, and I really hope it does work, we need to be sure that the people in charge of it really know what they're doing. They're there for the long run, long appointments, and that they're not secondary management, which is what a paid employee would be, because that paid employee will not be able to make the decisions. The other thing that came out, according to Hillary, and I confirm this, is that both Andrew Gottlieb and Brian Dudley were absolutely clear that you cannot have one professional, one employee, one entity doing both wastewater and water management, water system management, that they're totally separate. And that came out very clearly in that meeting, and it's not in our memo, but I just thought I'd share it with the board.
Janet?
Yes, Christina.
Through you to Helen. Helen, I'm going to have to be blunt. We don't have the approval to use alternative technologies in our town, and we have a state DEP person who's going to be making those determinations, who has demonstrated at every step of the process that he is a proponent of sewers. It's not wise to have mixed messages coming out of Wellfleet. We can get to the WMA staffing, municipal employee, whatever you, volunteer, or if you don't like the word volunteer, we've got pants first, then shoes. We've got to get this approved. We're spending money on Scott Horsley, who has 30 years in the field, who's highly respected, who has relationships. We need to let him do his job and worry about what the staffing will be later. You shouldn't be calling him. This is turning into a mess, and there's $60 to $100 million at stake with the sewer. We need to have absolute clarity who's in town and doing this, and it undermines the wastewater committee and undermines Scott if we have people coming in from the sideways. This is why I want to rescind the WMA and let the wastewater committee be in charge. There's too much money at stake to be messing around with this. This has to really, the process has to be clarified. We all have to agree. We have to get in the boat together and row in the same direction. Right now, we're not.
Kurt?
Yeah, just one other comment relative to what Helen said. I don't think I have a lot of disagreement with the characterizations, but one of the big gaps that, for example, the Conservation Commission or the Board of Health have right now is that the Board of Health, for example, oversees septic systems. They really don't, they're not involved in oyster activities, they're not involved in the salt marsh restoration activities, they're not involved in wastewater, basically stormwater runoff. One of the things that we've done in the town, for example, is the stormwater system that's on Commercial Street is a major improvement. There was a lot of nitrogen and all kinds of things flowing out there. My point is just this. This is much bigger than our current committees. And it's going to require, as you said, professional expertise to carry it out. And, in support of what Justina said, the main thing here is that I don't think we want to predispose the process to say, for example, okay, well, you can do whatever you want, but it has to look like that. I don't think that's wise at this point.
I wish Scott Horsley was here. And has Scott Horsley read the charge? Has Scott Horsley weighed in on this?
Yes, and so did Andrew, and so did Brian. And frankly, this really isn't a big deal, so to speak, but it's now become messy, where I was taking this kind of lightly because it really isn't a big deal, except now we really need to kind of clean this up because I 100% agree with your characterizations of this, eventually of what this group should be, no question. However, it's very premature, and obviously the fact that we're even talking about this right now is to that point. We shouldn't be talking about the WMA at this point in this process when we haven't even developed what that final plan is going to look like and how the WMA is going to be interacting at all. That's my only issue with that.
Janet?
Yes.
I want to respond to that. Actually, we do have a very clear idea about what the obligations of the town are going to be, because if you read through the guidance document, for one, from the Cape Cod Commission, we know exactly what's going to be happening. And
not exactly. We don't have a technical plan.
No, we don't know how we're going to do it.
Right.
But we do know that we're going to have to do X, Y, and Z very clearly to monitor what the results of our way of addressing the pollution are going to be. Agreed?
Right.
It's all in there. It's as clear as a bell. And respectfully to Justina, this may not be clear in everybody's mind, but it's, having made some effort, I'm not saying you haven't. It's very clear in my mind, and was clear in the mind of a number of people, but perhaps not during that meeting, because what was interesting when I spoke to Brian Dudley, he didn't understand that this charge of a possible group, right, a possible entity for the future implementation of the plan, right, to be in charge of monitoring the monitoring, to do the 5-year rotational checkups and stuff. He didn't understand that there's absolutely no idea of having them be in operation now to take, any power away from what your committee is doing. You guys need to finish with Horsley Witten, needs to be brought to the town. But again, I've said this before, the idea is to have the transition go really well. And that means you might want to have people who are going to be handed the torch, if this plan gets approved, already getting up to speed. And that is really important. And the charge is a good one. It's a general one. It can be changed. And certainly I wouldn't want to make an appointment to it now if nobody else wants to. But I would say that right off the bat, it would be very nice for your committee to be able to have full communication with whatever this entity is starting now, because there's a lot of information. And one more thing, this is separate. Again, it disturbs me that I agree with you, it's more than just the Board of Health and the CONSCOM, although CONSCOM is in charge of stormwater. Very much so, right, as is the Planning Board in developments. But they really need to be fully included in whatever's going forward from now on, so that they don't suddenly have this huge body of information smacked on their tables.
I just, real quickly, I respectfully have to disagree here. We're in the middle of trying to draft a final plan with that we still haven't received feedback from DEP, and you're suggesting, and this is totally respectfully, going back and forth, that we're supposed to go back and forth with different departments in town that we haven't, it's like writing a paper and having to submit it to several different teachers to get your grade on without knowing who you're actually passing that paper into. So this is where the confusion's gonna, it's already there. I kind of disagree with Justina. I think it's great that you're talking to Brian Dudley as a select board person. I think it's fantastic, or as a townsperson, I think it's fantastic. But the fact that you're now have created this WMA thing, that's where the confusion becomes created, because now it's just a level of different level of confusion.
Brian was not, forgive me, Brian was not confused.
Okay. Justina was, okay,
Yeah,
go ahead.
I'm glad to hear, Alex, that you think it's good Helen talked to Brian. I just think I'm a game player. There's $60 to $100 million in sewer at stake. Doesn't matter how we're going to staff it yet. We're 14 to 18 months to 2 years down the road. If Brian has doubts about alternative technologies and a select board member has a long conversation with him, including points of information that maybe the wastewater committee, it's not going to help us get what we need, which is to get those alternative technologies approved. That's a hugely financially responsible to the town. And I think that when I say get in the boat and row in the same direction, Helen, you're making lots of really great points, but I think they should be made internally around a conference table with the objective of building consensus and not in offline conversations with Mass DEP. They may not be, our friend in this area. And if there's a risk of losing the sewer, let's not take it. You don't have to be calling him and having these long conversations about things that aren't today's problem. So I really would like to rescind that WMA, and maybe Dan Hort can start some internal meetings where we can sit down in a collegial fashion around a round table and get some of Helen's excellent ideas on the table and begin to do some of the work that you're talking about, Helen, but let's not do it out in the public. Let's present a unified front. Let's have one wastewater committee, and let's let them and the consultant do their job.
Janet?
Yes.
I think we should only do the public's business in public. And the other reason for that is that all 5 of us, or even a quorum of us, could not be at one of those tables. And what's really important is that our level of information, even, we could have a special work meeting around this. That would be fine.
That's transparent.
No, but it's an open meeting.
Sure,
It's in public.
that's what I meant.
And I don't mind taking an amount of time on this because it's important. But in any case, one of the valuable things for me about tonight is we've all gotten a certain amount of information. And be very sure that if I do research, which any one of us can do, and in fact we all do, with somebody in an agency or in another town or whatever, I'm only bringing it back to you so that you can know it, and I'm not misrepresenting myself at any point. And Brian was helpful, and that's why I prefaced the tenor of the exchange at the beginning of the conversation, okay?
Okay, so let's get some direct steps to take. I'm trying to listen and read on, excuse me? Yes, I wasn't ready for that, but go ahead. Good.
I'm fairly conversant in what.
Microphone.
Is it on?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm fairly conversant with what's going on with my past experience. But one thing I have not been able to understand since the beginning of this 208 adventure, what is the goal? If we could wave a magic wand right now, never mind how we do it, I'm just going to wave a magic wand, and what would I accomplish that would satisfy the initiative of the 208 issue? Would it be nitrogen? Would it be antibiotics? Would it be, what are we trying to do?
It's very simple, Tom. It's 10,000 kilograms per year of nitrogen removal.
Is that relative? Is that every town? Is that
No,
relative?
that's our requirement
That's our
in
goal.
Wellfleet Harbor.
Well, what if we didn't have any nitrogen? We have to remove it whether we have it or not, or has that been established based on the loading now?
MEP has determined that we need to show
Who
a
is
plan.
MEP, please?
The Mass Estuaries Project. So under state regulations, we are tasked with figuring out how to demonstrate 10,000 kilograms per year of nitrogen removal. And we can easily, with our plan, we've got about 200,000. So it's not like it's not doable.
Yeah, I
So
can understand that. The issue I was wondering was, and how do we, how is this being measured? Did they just taking water samples in the harbor?
So it's a great question because, I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
Go ahead, no, go ahead.
So it's a great question. The answer is that the 10,000 is a planning number. And so frankly, if it's right or wrong, it really doesn't matter. What really matters is what happens at the Sentinel station in the harbor. There's one very specific location. And if our nitrogen numbers at that particular station in the harbor are not in compliance, we'll have to do more. And if they are in compliance, we won't.
So it's just the nitrogen loading at that one spot in the harbor
Yep,
is
that's
what
it.
our goal is.
Yep, it's very,
Thank
very
you.
It's
simple.
monitoring, yeah.
There's more.
Of course there is. There's a lot more. That's why I didn't want, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so those are the numbers. And, we could do a team here. Those are the numbers. However, in my self-education with Erin Perry at the Cape Cod Commission, Brian Dudley, and other people, and Hillary, the 208 plan is really about the town, a municipality, in our case, Wellfleet, having a structure for addressing pollution going into the watershed, and to have our eye kept on it, and to have a plan for doing that is formal. And since we sort of want to do it anyway, this is not really onerous to us. The key thing is to have it continue to be provable, which is why, and I'll send you a link to the interim plan that the wastewater committee has done, where you get a better sense of it, also the guidance document from the Cape Cod Commission. It's a good idea, and it's a formalized good idea, And that's really the end result that they want, as much as the numbers. Because let's say we don't make the numbers, we don't, boom, go to a new septic system. We do more compliance and then see if that works. It's not super rigid, but we have to show good faith and we have to show activity.
Real quickly.
Go ahead,
Because it
yeah.
just, I don't want to drag this on longer than we have to, but we are applying for a watershed permit. That's what we're going for. That's what the 208 now, which used to be a comprehensive wastewater management plan, would allow us to apply for a watershed permit to put all this stuff into the watershed. And we are obligated to now, because of the 208, pull out 10,000, whatever numbers you want to call it. Don't get worried about the specifics of the numbers. The crutch of this thing is we're applying for a permit, and we have to appease the authorities that we are going to do, as Helen said, our utmost to set a plan for that and then monitor it down the road. That's the basic, gist of where we are right now. And this has been a long haul, and, I think that everyone's getting a little impatient. Our committee is probably the most impatient at this point, believe me. So that's where we are, so.
So let's see if I can simplify the processes. So Helen wanted the WMA.
No,
But
no, what do I want? I want Horsley Witten to finish this with you
Yes.
guys, and then for you to come back to us and the Board of Health and the ConsCom and have a nice big powwow about where we are with it after everybody's read it, and then
Right.
go from there. And have the charge still on the table, not fulfilled, but as something to pass under the nose of the DEP as a future possible entity, i.e. saying, Brian Dudley said, it's up to the town how they want to do this, so this is like not on the table right now. But best faith, like good faith efforts include how we are going to have this monitored.
Right, just also for the
Okay,
record. Just
so
quickly,
that-
for Hillary, I just emailed, I've been very close contact with Hillary as well, and she's totally on board with the current plan of us, as I laid out earlier tonight, totally on board, which may or may not include the WMA,
Right.
just for the record.
And you guys are okay with keeping things going until there's somebody else in place?
Not only are we okay with, moving forward, continuing to move forward, that's really not an issue at all. We're happy to do that. In fact, our biggest objective in all of this was to make sure that the town's well-served, and that as we move to implementation, because our charge, the Comprehensive Wastewater Management Committee's charge, ends at implementation. So we were just being very proactive and looking out ahead, saying, okay, how do we transition to implementation? That's all this discussion started with.
Right, I know.
And our feeling has been all along that, we advocated at town meeting for a position and a different structure. The consultant's working on a recommendation to the town. So I think it's just premature to have a structure sitting around that basically hobbles the people that are trying to recommend a structure. It's just, it's counterintuitive.
And that structure is the
The
WMA.
The WMA that was passed by the board
The water
previously.
management.
The town is already the water management agency,
Yeah.
okay? That is the
And you
legal,
wanted that.
No, Hillary
Yes,
and
you
I.
did. You
No,
wanted-
Hillary and I worked on it because it's an ingredient in the plan.
Right, it's a charge. A charge was
It's
approved.
just a charge.
So you're not upset if we rescind it for now? I mean, until something,
Well,
till the next step?
No, I think that we should leave it there and get direct feedback from Horsley Witten to the language.
Right, that's why, as a board, as the wastewater board, we are recommending that we rescind it for now, so we can all have when that charge was passed, this is part of the reason, we didn't have any input. That's
Right,
part of the problem.
You were told about it, and you were copied with it.
Exactly, we were told about it, that's our point.
No, but you were copied with it.
Before,
Right. So
that's our point. So that's why we just back up a little bit, and then we can go forward later down the road. That's all we're asking.
All right, Are you fine with that if they continue doing what they've been doing and they're in touch with Scott Horsley?
And Hillary.
And, well, of course Hillary, that goes without saying.
Well,
But no, just, are you fine with that, yes or no? That we can rescind for now this charge for the WMA, let everything continue, follow through with Scott Horsley, and work towards getting a good description, a better description of the overall plan, and you guys can work on that in an open meeting.
I don't see the necessity for it, but I'm part of the group, so I'm not, the group votes. We are a 5-part brain who only has 4 parts tonight, and I'm never upset, okay? It's not upsetting.
Okay, then can I have a motion?
I move to rescind the vote of the Select Board on July the 24th, 2018, assigning the charge for the Wastewater Management Authority.
Second.
That's not what it did. Can I
Is there any
revise the motion?
discussion?
Yes, can I revise the amendment? I can do it. I can
Yes,
move it, so.
you may try.
I
yeah.
move that we rescind the language, that we rescind the charge for the Wastewater Management Authority, in parentheses, SIC, S-I-C, close parentheses, as voted on, what was the date, Kathleen?
July 24th.
July 24th, 2018. Second?
I don't see the difference, but.
We're
okay.
only revoking the charge.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, that's
Well,
basically
that's
what
the-
I said.
Yeah.
Mm.
Okay, whatever. Radu, do you have that? It's your final.
I'll have to look at the tape, Madam Chair.
We need a second.
Is there a second? All in favor? Okay. Thank you. Thank you. And
Are we done?
yes, yes, for now, for now.
Happy
I'll tell you,
Kathy?
God bless you guys for doing this. It's all the W's and the M's and, yes, yeah, thank you. And same with you, Helen. I know it's a difficult, and I see you taking care of what needs to be done.
We're good. Don't
Yeah,
worry.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
All right. I keep that flag,
Dredging.
that flag's in a funny position where I keep thinking someone's behind us coming in.
Do you want me to move it for you, Madam Chair?
No, no. Now that I can really clearly look at it, I'll know it. Okay, dredging update from the town administrator.
Madam Chair, we're looking at 2 issues right now. One is we wanted a letter of support from our congressional representatives in Washington, D.C., to the Army Corps of Engineers and the Office of Management and Budget, requesting that they include funding for the Wellfleet Harbor dredging project in their FY 2019 funding plan. So I received word this afternoon from our lobbyist in DC that Senator Markey's office has finalized the letter and is taking it around to the other 2, to Senator Warren's office and to Congressman Keating's office to get their signature on it, and that letter should be delivered to their offices it was either going to be delivered today or we expect tomorrow. So that one piece of it is covered. The other thing that we're looking at right now is the Army Corps of Engineers in the Massachusetts office has applied for a water quality certificate. They applied with Mass DEP back in December of 2017. They are running into a little bit of a roadblock in getting that permit released. The issue seems to be, according to Mass DEP, the issue seems to be with the National Heritage and Endangered Species Program. I spoke to both the Army Corps of Engineers and the Endangered Species Program people today. I talked to Craig at the Army Corps of Engineers. They are having a meeting this coming Thursday. I volunteered to be present at that meeting. Craig thought it would be better if I wasn't there, that it was just between the Army Corps of Engineers and the Endangered Species Program. So that is going to happen on Thursday. I also contacted Amy at the National Heritage and Endangered Species Program. She was a little bit more I guess cautious isn't the word, but she was not as forthcoming as Craig was in our conversation. However, because I tried to get from her, what is a timeline? What do you need to have happen for you to reach an agreement with the Army Corps of Engineers and with Mass DEP on issuing this permit? And she wasn't real forthcoming on this. She couldn't really give me a timeline. But I did have a good conversation with her. I basically said with any one of these people, if you need me in your office for a meeting or to talk about something at any point, I'll wipe my calendar clean and I'll be there. So I said that to Amy. I also said it to Craig. Craig is going to call me back on Friday to let me know how the meeting went. At that point, Amy from National Heritage has indicated she didn't think that the issues were insurmountable. What that means to her, I'm not sure. What does it take from her to make them go away? Yeah. The town reached an agreement where we would contribute to research on turtles. I don't know if that's what they're thinking that the Army Corps of Engineers should do. I basically said, town of Wellfleet needs this to happen. We need to do whatever we need to do to make it happen. And that at any time, if you need me there to facilitate, not facilitate because they're the experts, but to be a part of it and to speak on behalf of the town of Wellfleet, I would be there in a second. After I find out on Friday, then I think it's time maybe to rethink this a little bit and say, okay, if they're not making progress, who could have an effect? Who could, there's a person above Amy, would it help to go to Boston and meet with that person and talk to her? Would it help if our congressional representatives in the state, spoke to them to try and facilitate this? So I'm going to wait for the Thursday meeting and find out what resulted from that, if they feel like they made progress.
And does she know that we are on a time schedule?
Yes.
A timeline?
Yeah.
Okay.
I followed up with
I
an
thought
email
so
to
too.
her after I talked to her on the
Yeah.
phone and just said, we're at a critical juncture here. That,
Like 2 weeks or so?
yeah, that
Okay.
we need to have everything in place to be able to be on the work plan, so.
Okay. Helen?
Question, revealing my ignorance yet again. Which species of turtle is this that's a problem?
Diamond terrapin.
Okay, is she aware of Barbara Brenessel?
I did not ask her if she was aware of.
Well-
So Bob Prescott's been in touch with her.
Yes.
He's kind of our link with
Yeah.
her.
So a thing that they may or may not know, so let's be sure they do know it. If Bob Prescott is volunteering this, he has a lot to volunteer, so he may not be volunteering it.
He's on the dredging committee.
I know. But our Conservation Commission, for example, that Barbara Brenessel is on, she wrote a textbook on diamondback terrapins. She's been overseeing for years, I think she's stepping back from it now, the terrapin program at Audubon, right? This town really likes its diamondbacks, and here's the question that you might want to ask Barbara. I read her book, but I've forgotten the answer to this. Doesn't what's happening with the sediment, the black mayonnaise, impact their habitat too? Okay? I don't know the answer to that, but a quick call to Barbara Brenessel, you'd get the answer in 2 seconds. And to bring that into the picture, because we are good players in relation to this species of turtle.
The Army Corps of Engineers is presenting research that shows there are very few of these terrapins
In the federal
in the
channel.
federal channel.
Yeah,
And the National Heritage Foundation is sort of doesn't agree with it.
well, ask Barbara, because she really does know.
Well, we will try everything to
we'll try
convince
her.
them of
Good.
what the facts are, so.
Okay, Madam Chair,
Yes?
may I? I requested this update. It's in the minutes, because a lot of people in town are asking what is happening with the dredging. We really weren't informed when Plymouth got awarded the funds for dredging, why that happened, why Wellfleet didn't get in the queue. But early in October, Craig Martin, the engineer that's overseeing the dredging for Wellfleet, did contact Wellfleet and say, you know, there are still funds in the bank for this. You can still get in on this for 2019. What we're saying to you now is that now there's a controversy with regard to one permit, one certificate. Are there terrapin turtles in the federal channel? We don't know that. Do they want another $10,000 for more research? I won't use the E word, but that's what that feels like. But the larger issue at hand here is that we really haven't had solid communication from, you know, what's going on, you know, what's happening, where are we at? We can't go another year. We can't go another 2 years. The harbor is the calling card for Wellfleet, and it is abominable, the condition that it is in now. It's now affecting shellfish grants in Chipman's Cove. But go down there at low tide and look what it's doing to boats sitting in that slime. I'm ashamed. So we've got to pull out all the stops. We've got a 2-week window to try and convince the turtle lady that we do not have terrapins in the federal channel so that we can get in the queue and get the funds to go forward with this. I think in the future, we're going to have to appoint a committee, you know, a dredging committee that really, you know, is working on this and is appointed by the Selectboard. But the other thing I want to impart, I sat in at a dredging meeting earlier this week, and one of the long-standing committee members said, you know, we really have to put pressure on our elected officials to let them know we want to get this done. What I'm telling you, the public, is this Board of Selectmen is your elected town officials. Ultimately, this project is on our shoulders, on our backs, and we need to do our job to make sure that that gets done. Dan has just outlined what we need to do for the next 2 weeks. I want you to all collectively cross your fingers and say prayers that this gets done, because another 2 years, between that and the shark thing, we're dead in the water. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Flynn? Okay.
Kathleen's really on the money there. We have a myriad of dredging entities in this town. We have task force, we have committees, we have recommendations from advisory boards, we have all these things. There is no coordination at all. This is a big disadvantage in this issue, because I get rumors from people all over the place. I have all kinds of conflicting pieces of information. I should say data, it's not even information. The second thing, and is I thought when we voted at the Natural Resources Board, Advisory Board, we already voted $20-some-odd thousand in extortion money for the turtle lady, and I know that you couldn't say that up there, and you shouldn't. But as a citizen, I know what happened, that when they found no turtles at the church, they paid $20,000 and they got the permit. When they found turtles in the harbor, in the inner harbor, we paid $20,000 and got the permit. Can we just send the lady the check and get done with this?
Janet?
Do you have an answer to
I
that?
will just respond to that without saying it quite as bluntly as he just did. I told Craig Martin as much, that if this is what the issue is,
Yeah.
we will hold our nose, even though it stinks to do it this way. We will hold our nose, and I will come up with the funding. If that's really what the holdup is here, we will make it happen. If I can, quite honestly, if I can pay somebody $10,000 and we get the harbor dredged, that's money well spent. I said somewhat the same thing to Amy at the National Heritage for Endangered Species. Not quite as bluntly, but I basically said the town of Wellfleet will do whatever we need to do to make this happen.
You know, I just want to add that, you know, and the dredging committee and people in town have been working really hard, and I've been on it maybe 2 years this fall, and they've been working on it for 3 or 4 years, and working really seriously, working very diligently, doing all the right things. This comes down to federal grant money, you know, and you're not given a reason why you don't get the funding. You can only conjecture. Plymouth is having their big 400th celebration, whether that's the real reason. It's hard to know, but, you know, we're working. Once the federal gets going, the state has said, you get the federal stuff going, we'll be behind you if you've got all your permits in a row, and then it's up to the town. People have really put a lot of thought and energy, and maybe we haven't been as good about communicating, but I think we've had pretty regular dredging updates. Last spring, we thought we were going to get it. You know, we had everything in, and change of administration and late budget approval in DC. And it wasn't until May or June that we found out we didn't get the money. So it's only been like 2 months, July and August, that we've had to kind of, it wasn't until the beginning of September that new funds became available. So we've been kind of scrambling for this, but we are hard at work on it. We know that there's got to be a better system in place for next time, and actually that's one of the requirements for the state and the federal, is that we have to show that we will have money and a plan for maintenance, dredging, the rest of the harbor's life, the rest of Wellfleet's life. So, yeah, everybody's working very hard on it. So what?
Well, when you're done.
I'm done.
Okay, so Jerry couldn't be here. He called me before the meeting, and he thought, for whatever reason, that Mike Flanagan, the harbor master, would be here. He had a question, but maybe Dan can answer it, or members of the dredging committee. His question was, why couldn't we have, this is not my question, this is Jerry's question.
Comes up every time, yeah.
Why can't we have our own dredging equipment, and if so, how much would it cost?
So presently, we cannot get dredging equipment into the harbor without dredging the federal channel first. And that's what we've been saying, and nobody seems to listen to it. Once we get the federal channel dredged, the county has dredgers. Two of them aren't working; their engines are blown out or something. We paid for a smaller dredger a few years ago, but that is something we will be looking at. The Airbnb tax that is proposed, not only will the funds be able to pay for 208 plans and septic and even septic upgrades, it's used for all water. So we can use that also for that money for maintenance dredging. Somewhere, there's no saying exactly where, but somewhere the ball was dropped, and we have certainly paid the price for that ball being dropped. And Mr. Felix.
Yeah, just as a member of the committee, and also in my capacity with the Cape Cod Water Protection Collaborative, dredging's an issue that gets discussed at our meetings as well. And I've listened to many of the towns go about their dredging processes and so on. The county is committed to get a shallow water dredge piece of equipment. So in other words, this is something that all of the towns on the Cape could share, and specifically overcomes the problem that Wellfleet has with respect to a very shallow basin, and in particular the inner harbor, so the mooring area, the areas that are back behind the pier. So that's the biggest problem in terms of dredging Wellfleet Harbor, because we've got black mayo, it's very difficult to remove. You have to have very special equipment that can go in shallow water. The county's committed to do that. So I would, as part of our ongoing maintenance plan, we should have every expectation that that equipment will be available. So in answer to Jerry's question, help is on the way. That is a commitment from the county.
And to add to that, once the black mayo is removed and we do maintenance dredging, you can take that maintenance dredge and
we'll
put
be-
it on,
yeah.
you can even put it in the Herring River or on the beaches. Yet, well, after the after the black mayonnaise is removed. We'll see, but once we get to that point, but we're just trying to get the federal channel dredged, and that's the main thing. So everybody hear that. We can't do anything without the federal channel dredged. We can't get a barge in here. So the other thing, well, I'm not going to put this, I'm not going to say that yet.
So,
May I?
update. Related?
Yeah, go ahead.
So yesterday, I was at a meeting that included Senator Sear and Senator Tarr from the North Shore.
Gloucester.
Well, he's from Gloucester, but he represents the North Shore, the coastal area on the North Shore and some inland. And dredging was brought up by me briefly and by Nancy Chivetto, our shellfish constable, when they were all out on the flats. And I hope that our needs are communicated to him as well as to Senator Sear, who's very aware of them. And I have a question through you to Dan. So that letter that was going to Keating, was that something that went out? The draft letter that you sent to the board today?
You have it in your packet to
We're going to sign
sign
it tonight.
tonight,
Oh.
and it'll go out tomorrow morning.
Right. And I think that these senators who are state senators here in the state should also be copied with it, because I found Senator Tarr to be really smart and on top of things in terms of shellfish. It was a shellfish-related meeting.
So I'll also say that Senator Sear and Representative Peake have been supportive all along and have
Yeah.
lobbied for us. And Sarah Peake's office, Sarah's away for another week or so, but her office has been in touch with the National Heritage Endangered Species Program people, Amy and the other ladies. So they've been in contact. They've been very good. They've been very helpful.
Janet?
And I just want to also say that dredging is the new thing that all coastal towns need. I mean, we are not the only town. The whole East Coast, West Coast, lakes, rivers, they're all clamoring for money and equipment. Go ahead, Kathleen.
I didn't mention in my previous statement that as time has gone by, while we've been in this process, I forget the exact number, if it's 800,000 square feet of more sludge has built up in the inner basin of the harbor. We're now looking at upwards of a $20 million project. This pales in comparison to the Herring River Restoration Project, but it's still the largest ticket item that Wellfleet has been looking at in the past 50 years. $20 million to dredge our harbor. So this is not a small thing, and we cannot drop the ball on this. We have hopes that we'll get into that 2-week window with some positive, whatever it's going to take to get that last permit in place. Going forward, I would ask that the Board of Selectmen, our chairman, have another dredging update the first week of November, when we can bring more information to the table and to the public about where we are. And again, say your prayers. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else, or should we move on to, okay.
I said earlier that I wouldn't bring this up when I commented to you, but seeing it's been brought up by the board, I'll try to comment on it. A group of friends of the harbor, we should call ourselves, or something like that, have offered to buy the dredge for the town. It's a specially designed dredge to do muck and sand. It is currently in Florida, and it's ready to go on. It can be delivered on a truck. You don't need to go out in the channel. And it can be set up and kept in the harbor. We could work just in the harbor or out in the channel, but I'm sure that feds wouldn't like us in their backyard. As far as bringing the barge in, I don't want to go into a lot of detail right now in engineering, but I'd like to maybe make a presentation we would later on. It's actually pumped, and you could leave the barge out in the deep water in the anchorage area, and we could actually pump it there. We can pump sand all the way to Audubon if they wanted without trucking it. We could use it for fill in the Herring River.
You can't use the muck there now in the Herring River.
Well, that would be an issue later on, but that was just one of the opportunities we could do. But as far as disposal, that's to be worked out, and we have several plans for that. I would like you to keep an open mind in that fact that we don't need the feds necessarily. It'd be wonderful. I wish they'd come and do the whole job, but there is help.
Okay, well, you know what you just said, you'd like to do a presentation, have them come, and we can certainly give them the information, the measurements, the analysis of everything, and that'd be great if that would work. So just get a presentation, get some, I don't know, you're an engineer, I don't know if you can do that, but yeah, great.
Just keep an open mind, but
Oh,
keep
we
working on the old,
definitely.
on the present
We've just been
system.
told for the past 3 years that, you can't take the sludge and put it anywhere. It's got to be,
That's why it's costing
barged
so
out
much money.
offshore, so, ask, you can come and talk. We've got all the information, all the
Very well.
logistics, but yes, they can definitely help, no problem. I think the harbor master was also talking about just coming in and with just clearing out the L pier also, that can be done with a bulldozer, a front-end loader, and trucked off. So I don't know where that's at, but obviously it hasn't been done. Okay, Chief Pauly.
Good evening.
How are you?
So I come in front of the board tonight, the select board, to give you an initial update as to where we are on trying to improve the beach communication, particularly beach emergency communication situation. You should have a memo from me dated October 19th, and it talks about 3 basic areas. Those areas being, I'll just talk about them briefly: 911 telephone boxes, cellular phone coverage, and then improved radio communications. So we've been working on the issue or concern of improved radio communications, myself and the beach department director, basically for the last year, in general discussions, and trying to figure out how we can improve communication, particularly for the lifeguards. Each lifeguard is issued each lifeguard area of the 4 oceanside beaches that belong to the town are issued portable radios, and those radios communicate through the UHF ultra-high band technology to our fire alarm, which is fire dispatch in Bourne, and that happens over a series of repeaters. So this is something that we've been working on, but certainly it has come to the forefront in the last couple of months. But let me go back to the 911 telephone boxes. I hope I gave you a photograph or a printout there, a picture. Yes, that's what I envision. I've already had discussions with our communications and radio vendor, Beltronics, out of Nashua and Framingham, and they are familiar. They've installed a number of those types of systems. They call them campus systems, either in hospital facilities or hospital campuses or college campuses. And what we envision is that we would have one of those telephone boxes at each beach, most likely located at the beach house or the bath area, because obviously you need electricity. And one would go to an emergency, go to the box, it's a big yellow box, there's emergency on it, open the door, pick up the handset, and that would dial 911 directly to fire dispatch. And each location would be pre-identified. So if I pick up the telephone from LeCount Hollow, it comes in as LeCount Hollow. So that's something that we're costing out right now. I've had discussions with the Belknap County Sheriff's Office Dispatch Center, again, who dispatches for the fire and rescue, and they're certainly supportive of our efforts in this area. So as I said, we're costing that out, and I hope to have better information within the next 30 days. Obviously, it's something that takes time to implement. We have to have Verizon on board with this. We have to look at the quality of the existing telephone lines that are there now that may not have been used, a portion of them for many years. So we're going to be working through all that. I know Chief Facet's also been on board with this. So to me, that's probably the lower hanging fruit here, but it also is the first good step to make some needed improvements. Then I'm going to jump down to improved radio communications, because again, this is something that we as a town should have the ability to implement. Again, we know that there's problems out on the beach. When I talk about the beaches for the benefit of the public, I'm talking about the actual beach, the ocean edge. Once you get below the dune, we're at a point where cell phone coverage is almost non-existent, and radio coverage in terms of off of a portable radio that a police officer may carry, a lifeguard may carry, or a paramedic EMT may carry, to reach dispatch, to get up over that dune is nearly impossible. And that is something that is not exclusive to Wellfleet, but certainly is an issue in Wellfleet, parts of Eastham, Truro, and a certain area of Race Point. So there is technology that can improve that situation greatly, and that's through the use of repeater systems. And that what happens there is, off of a portable radio, again, standing at the bottom of the beach or at the bottom of the dune, someone clicks the mic and contacts dispatch. That radio signal goes from the portable radio to the repeater antenna, where it would be located somewhere on the beach, parking lot more than likely, or some specific area, and then that message is repeated up the line. We use that technology now throughout Cape Cod, and it's a very, very good system. The issue is to get the coverage, the most coverage that you can, and that whole stretch of beach from Eastham to Wellfleet, to Truro. I'm just talking Wellfleet's needs right now, although we know that there are regional issues here, regional coverage issues here. So we are in the process of having a radio analysis done. We know within a pretty good idea, again, if you look at the town line from Eastham to Truro, that 9 or so miles of Wellfleet, we have a pretty good idea of what the portable radio coverage, the signal strength is there, and it's very poor. Some areas are worse than others. What Beltronics is doing for us at no charge is laying out computer models to say, okay, if we place X number of repeaters strategically in areas, what will that do to improve that radio coverage? So it's a computer model. They've done it for years. They've got great expertise in this. So that's what we're having performed right now. The issue that we face is that this technology does not come cheap. When I'm talking about repeater systems, we may be to a point where we have to install various radio towers along either Ocean View Drive or the beach parking lots or the beach areas. That could be one tower, it could be 3 or 4 towers. We don't know at this point. We don't know what the size of these towers may be. But those towers also, and those radio systems require electricity, they require radios within cabinetry that has to be weatherproof, that has to be designed to withstand a whole host of harsh conditions in terms of winter, summer, salt air, you name it. So, again, and I'm not trying to put the cart before the horse here, but we should be prepared that this will become, this technology and any improvements that we may be able to make here is going to come at a cost. And I expect those costs will run into a couple $100,000 plus.
How big are the towers?
We don't know until we have the
No, like,
analysis is done.
okay,
Yeah.
all
Once we get the analysis done,
Yeah.
Madam Chair, then we'll find out, can this be put on a telephone pole? Or do we need to do something taller?
Big,
But we
yeah.
don't know until that analysis is done.
Okay. And I'm sure you're thinking of including or talking to Eastham and Truro because they may want to be included in this.
We are having
Regionally?
discussions, and I know the town administrator has had some discussions
Yeah.
with our state officials, again, through Senator Sear and Representative Peake and the governor's office to see if perhaps there could be some assistance with this. It's a regional problem, there's no
Yes, yeah.
question. And it's going to take a regional solution. My focus is Wellfleet right now in terms of getting the best radio coverage that we can for our personnel that are out there on the beaches.
Yeah, well, thank you, and this is what we need. Ms. Bacon?
Couple of questions, Chief. Thank you for this information. How soon do you think you could get the call boxes installed?
Well, that's something, again, that I think, I'm hoping that we could have it done before beginning of the next season. Again, I look at that as more as the low-hanging fruit. You know, it's a matter of making sure that the phone lines are in place, that they work, and having Verizon come out and look at those, and then get costing on the installation of those call boxes.
I do remember the call boxes that were out there in another era, and we decided not to, we pulled them because, well, we had Wi-Fi, we had cell phones. My next question is, these repeater towers, if needed, to put a tower in, I'm under the impression that they won't be condoned by the Cape Cod National Seashore.
I have not had discussions with the Cape Cod National Seashore. I have had a few brief discussions with the town administrator. From my perspective, and this is with all due respect to the National Seashore, because we need to be partners. In a lot of ways, we are partners. But this is an issue that where public safety comes first. And I think that if we get to the point, and I hope that we don't have to get to this point, but if we have to get to the point where we have to go above the level of the National Seashore on Cape Cod, then maybe that's something that we may have to look at politically. And I'm not saying we need to do that. And the town administrator may be able to give us a little bit more insight, because I know he's had, not to put him in a difficult position, but I know he's had a couple of meetings on this. Again, and with respect to these towers, this is something that they could take advantage of also, because but on a particular radio towers, you have the potential to serve multiple agencies.
Yeah.
So this is something that they may be able to take advantage of. But again, I want to get the technology answer first and the radio coverage answer first, and get an idea of what the costs are before we take the next step as to, okay, how do we implement this?
It's also possible that we can put a repeater on their water tower, and maybe we can put a repeater on our water tower. Yeah, I don't know what your analysis might come out and say, that's not worth doing, but we'll get to that point. My third question, and I don't know, this might be just a dream. Are there satellite radios now that could be purchased that would be state-of-the-art for our lifeguards? And I'm told that the best radios in the state are with the state police.
Well, our system.
Can we get those?
We do. Our system operates off the state police system.
Okay.
The 800 system that we operate off of Cape Cod, and I say we, it's fire and police. They're different frequencies, but they operate off the same tower system. So we're utilizing the best system available. I can stand in my kitchen on a small portable radio and talk to fire alarm and Bourne off my portable radio, and I do it quite often in the summertime. The reason why I can do that is because the radio that I'm utilizing, the portable radio, which is the same that police and fire use, is in a location that it sends the signal right to the water tower in Wellfleet that we do have a repeater on, and then it goes right up the Cape. And it happens in seconds. It happens in milliseconds. So the technology's there, it's a matter of the coverage. One of the things we are looking at is would the Marconi water tower be helpful to us?
Yeah.
We don't know. We're already utilizing the Wellfleet water tower as part of our regular daily operations, but it doesn't provide the coverage below the dunes because of the cut of the dunes and the short distance of width of beach from water line to where the dunes go up. That's the challenge, is getting over those dunes. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah.
I'm not aware of any satellite-type radio systems that they may be, in use in the military, but nothing that is compatible with what we're utilizing in public safety right now.
Yep, Helen?
So the piece of information that we haven't had, and thank you for all the information that we have had, is this is just for the 4 ocean beaches?
That's correct.
It's not for the harbor?
We tend to
And,
have,
I'm sorry, and it's not for the bay? It's not for Duck Harbor and the Gut, right?
that's correct. We have pretty good to excellent coverage on the ocean side from Duck Harbor through the bay and out to Indian Neck, because again, we're not having to get over the dune. We're already at a level where
Right.
our radio signals are hitting the repeater, either the Truro repeater or the Wellfleet repeater, because we're not getting up over those dunes. We're at a level that
Right, okay,
signals
understood,
doesn't
but
have
I
to
just
fight.
wanted that put out there. But, you see, I'm kind of a fan of the idea of the call boxes, because frankly, most of the year when the beach is used by maybe not as many people is not when there are lifeguards there. And even during the summer, a lot of people use it before the lifeguards and after the lifeguards leave during, at the end of the day. And anything we can do to get help a little bit sooner may, in certain circumstances, prevent loss of life. But the bottom line is, it's all different now, and we just have to be really careful in the water, So this will not solve anything.
it is different now.
Yeah.
And not to be, you pay me to be a realist. That's my job. And reality is that it's different now, and it's going to be this way
For a while,
for quite a while. I think certainly in our lifetimes.
yeah.
But we can still go and wallow in the shallows and be at the beach and look at the incredible view and get wet with salt water and then go swim in a pond. Oh, that's not a hardship.
Just rinse off first.
You don't have to legally.
Madam
All right,
Chair,
kids.
if I may just touch on one other thing.
Yes.
So the third item is cellular phone coverage, and again, we, as I indicated in the memo to the board, we don't have a lot of influence over that. All we can do is engage in discussions with the major cellular phone companies and see if, it would be advantageous for them to improve cellular phone coverage on the oceanside beaches. Oftentimes, cellular phone towers and are utilized to put repeater systems in for public safety, and it's actually a partnership that has worked for years. But again, what may work for a cellular phone tower on the oceanside beaches may not be the appropriate place to enhance radio communication. So these are things that have to be looked at and engineered out. I don't want to dismiss it. but our influence there is very limited. One other thing to get to Ms. Wilson's comment, and I've had discussions with our beach department director on this. We need to have rapid access to the beach. And I've mentioned this also and I've articulated this to the town administrator. You know, oftentimes we show up with a paramedic or two paramedics and a paramedic or an EMT, so the two people initially on the crew. And they're lugging down the beach what we call a first-in bag, which probably weighs about 20 to 25 pounds, oxygen, maybe a cardiac monitor, a scoop stretcher, or a stair chair. Two people are doing that, and they're lugging that down initially. Now, when the lifeguards are there and on duty, they're fantastic. They are truly our partners, or police officers show up. But there often is the case, particularly in the shoulder season, where we don't have that assistance. And we're not too shy as to take and start to politely but firmly request the assistance of able-bodied citizens who are very happy to assist. But the bottom line is we've got to be able to get an ATV or a small four-wheel drive vehicle onto the beach in a rapid fashion with equipment. And I will be pushing hard to accomplish that. And I don't know what resistance we may get from the seashore, if any. Their rangers have the ability to get on the beach in certain locations between Truro and Orleans, and maybe some points in between. But we have to have the ability somewhere in Wellfleet to access that beach with a four-wheel drive vehicle. It is a necessity. I'm not talking about putting an ambulance on the beach, but a four-wheel drive pickup or an ATV with that equipment so we can rapidly extricate any patient from any situation. We're not just limited to shark situations here. Cardiac arrests,
Walking.
drownings, collapses, heat stroke, whatever the case may be. We respond to a whole host of those things in the course of the season. So while that's not in your memo, that is a very, very serious concern of mine in a situation that has to be corrected.
So I've been thinking about that. How, where can you access it? I mean, I can't picture a four-wheel drive or even an ATV zooming down the scarp, down the hill. Is there an easier access point anywhere, like on private land? There's that one point down like Priscilla Road or something like that. But then also, how fast can you go, say, from the middle and up? Like, how fast can the seashore ATVs get going, or how quickly?
They can move. They can move pretty quickly, and they have, again, the seashore has the rangers have four-wheel drives, and they're able to move quickly, and they have been helpful in the past.
Yeah.
And we have had the ability through the beach department, the fire department, to utilize an ATV under most conditions. But again, that ATV is only hauling a person and not a patient and a whole host of equipment. So my thinking on this, and I'd have to go out and actually get out on the beach and look at it from the bottom up and take the whole ride, and I intend to do that this season. But my initial impression, and I would certainly look to Director Thomas for her expertise, because she has a lot more expertise there than I do. But my initial impression would be probably to look at Newcomb Hollow as the beach access point for us, because it's the closest to police and fire headquarters. So we can be at Newcomb Hollow, from the fire station in 2.5 to 4 minutes, depending upon traffic. And then, sure, if we have to get down to the counter, it's going to take us a while to get there. But if we had to, we could send someone in that direction. But again, I would defer to Suzanne, and we'll have to put our heads together and think about this.
Yeah. No, get a plan together. More plans, the better.
Question?
Okay.
So, do I understand from what you've said that the fire department already has an ATV?
We have acquired the used ATV from the beach department. We actually commandeered it one day, and we haven't given it back. It was after the lifeguards had gone off duty for the season, and we had a rescue, and so it was being stored at the DPW. We grabbed it. The gentleman was halfway between Newcomb Hollow and Ballston, maybe?
True, yeah.
I'm sorry, what? Long Nook, thank you. He was an elderly gentleman halfway there who needed assistance. So we grabbed the beach department's ATV and went down and assisted in bringing him and his dog off the beach, as well as the rangers did. So
Wait, so through you, the Rangers also showed up?
the rangers showed up. They had accessed the beach from Truro, and they had come along with one of their Tahoes, with one
So
of
the
their four drives.
call went to both the park?
It was initially dispatched to Truro, and Truro asked for our assistance because there was unsure location as to where exactly this gentleman was.
Okay, what I'm trying to pinpoint here is an aspect of mutual aid which I at least was not yet aware of. In other words, mutual aid exists between the municipalities, but are you also saying that when a 911 call goes out and it's in the park, that the park also has that communicated to them? Is that what happens?
That's what
or-
happens if there's a ranger that's available or a ranger that's in the area. He or she will respond.
Okay, yeah.
But again, no guarantees, but if they're available, they will respond.
So the second question is, how wide is one of those things that both departments have one of? ATVs. How wide is it?
3
How many feet? Inches? Feet?
Well, it's probably 4 feet across, the one we have now, but that's a one-person ATV. I'm looking at, and I've talked about it with the chief, a side-by-side, which is basically passenger and somebody in shotgun with a flatbed in the back where you could put an ambulance or the equipment, stretcher, or the
Yeah.
equipment from the ambulance.
So,
And Truro has one of those, and they're traditional width, 6 feet wide.
okay, so right now at Newcomb Hollow, there's this excellent
Yeah.
path. Is that wide enough for an ATV, this thing you're describing, to get down?
Our ATV, the 48-inch variety, goes up and down quite nicely. That path could be, because it's created by the DPW each spring with their skid steer, they could make it so it could accommodate the wider side-by-side Polaris
Okay.
vehicle.
Thank you.
Respectfully, we need to plan again for the possibility or the real need to get something larger down there in terms of a pickup truck. Because we carry a lot of equipment, potentially, and we may be carrying more than 2 people. So while the side-by-side, I think, will work great and resolve a number of problems or a number of issues, it's really limited to the beach department during the time that the beach department is staffed with lifeguards. We need to be able to get there with a small four-wheel drive and get up and down there for those times that side-by-side ATV is not available or has been put away for the season.
Okay, well, come up with a plan.
And I think it's achievable. It's just we got to figure out how to do it.
Yeah, there's a lot of variables. Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for looking into all of that.
May I
Okay,
share one more thought about this, since we've all got it in our brains? It's
Mm-hmm.
short. I'm all for Wellfleet having as much to offer as possible in terms of public safety. However, it's unreasonable for any of us, I think, to imagine that we can cover all situations always. And most of the time we spend out in the world, is, if you want to think about it like that, it's unsafe. And I'm just realizing how much of modern life says every single situation we have to be 100% ready to take care of. I don't have a take on this right now. I'm just putting that thought out there because it's got to be part of how much we do and when. It has to come, it has to be a factor,
sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to review of town fees.
Thank you, Chief.
Shellfish Shack.
Shellfish Shack,
Oh, I already checked that off.
sorry.
Dan, do you want to update people on what's
Just a
happened at the
brief
Shellfish Shack?
update. We have boarded up the Shellfish Shack, the windows, to prevent vandalism and people accessing the building. If you have driven by it, you've noticed that it was done with plywood. We intend to stain that plywood so it will blend in more with what, a gray color, so it will blend in more with what the existing building looks like. In addition, we have talked about the possibility of an upweller at that location, and the Shellfish Constable has been given the go-ahead to do a feasibility study on if a upweller would work in that building. So that's underway there. What we've tried to do is make the building safe for now until we decide what we're going to do with it, so.
Kathleen?
Do you know if the hole in the roof got patched? If they were able to board that over?
I think it did.
I think so, but I will make a note of it and
Yeah.
just
I
ask them
haven't
to
been
be
able
sure.
to do a walk around.
Yeah, I walked around. It looked good. They also cleaned up the
Broken glass?
area, if you can call it a yard around there.
And Janet, I'm not finished, but Dan, do you know if, are there any thoughts in the future that we could, completely rehab the building to house the Shellfish Department, or in addition to creating an upweller space there? We voted to tear it down. We brought it back as Dennis's last wish. It sits before us now, and while I know it's in the floodplain, and I know that it's assessed at 0, why not just make the improvements and make the building, a workable building for our Shellfish Department until the next, bad storm takes it. Is
And
that
hopefully the Shellfish
any thought on
Department
that,
is
or-
in it. But it is under consideration. We're first hoping to see what the feasibility study report tells us about whether an upweller can go into that building. One of my somewhat short-term goals is I would like to see another location for the beach sticker sales in the summertime, so that where the Shellfish Department currently is, that they would have that entire building. That's kind of my goal there. But as to a future use, you've read kind of the report from the building inspector about, the issues that have existed with that building. As far as reestablishing utilities, that shouldn't be a problem. Getting some sort of a sewer system, septic system for that office, if it was going to be used as a working office, again, would be one of the options. But what our goal has been first is to see what we get as a report from the feasibility study as far as an upweller, and then kind of bring that to the select board and kind of get some direction on where you'd like to go from there.
Many people would be distraught over the moving of the beach office for a number of reasons. It brings families there with their beach chairs first thing in the morning, and it's a nice place to have your coffee and wait to get your sticker. And then later on in the afternoon, you can get ice cream. But it's always been a tradition for Wellfleet families to queue up at that building in that particular area. So it would be a shame not to have that there. But seeing as 3 Kendrick Ave has gone south, our Shellfish Department deserves its own space.
Mm-hmm.
And we have kept this Shellfish Shack on the table now. Maybe we could get more out of it than just an upweller. We'll see.
Madam Chair?
Justina?
Just quickly, Dan, through you to Dan, I'll pass along a comment about the beach sticker office, which is it was brought to my attention that there's lines during peak times, and then it sits pretty empty. And the person who commented to me said if we directed the lines outside and then had like a ticket window, you could minimize the square footage needed by the beach sticker function inside and let people queue up outside, and then it's empty for a good portion of the day. I don't know, Suzanne, if you think that's viable, but.
In 1991, when we moved into that building, we had basically 25% of the floor space. The other 75 was a retail space, and we had people in lines outside. Like, you know, we had split rail fences, and they had to queue up and stand in the rain and the sun, and they complained endlessly, and we didn't even have computers in those days. So I'm pretty sure that the space that we use is not effectively used because it's not 100% of the time.
Right.
But as I've said before, if you can find a space where I can put my stuff, people can park, and we can accommodate a line undercover, I'll move there.
Do you think that an outside awning would be a possibly acceptable, or is it just too much of a nightmare?
I think in the rain, when it's blowing sideways, the awning's not going to be effective.
But what if they didn't go there those days?
I'm sorry?
Well, just because of what, I mean, I don't want to hijack this, but I mean, there's not that many days that it rains.
No, I'm not saying anything against it, Justina.
Right.
I'm just saying if you're going to,
You've had bad experiences with the lines
I've
outside.
had that experience with the line. People are happier inside.
Right.
I'll just put it that way. But it doesn't have to be inside there inside. It could be
Yeah.
someplace else inside.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
So,
I'm thinking. All right, go ahead. I want to digest it. Go ahead, Helen.
yeah, so to address Kathleen's point, right around the corner, if the beach shack was used, the whole building, and made a little nicer, please, for employees, that would be recreational use, so it would be within, you
used to
know,
be the
the
sticker
limits of the deed, you know, restriction, which we have to pay attention to. Of course, we couldn't do that and have the upweller.
No.
And
No,
through
probably
you to Constable Chavetta. At the Shellfish Committee, there was some kind of preliminary draft, maybe plan for maybe the upweller. I did see that on the table, right? There was a little bit of a drawing indicating where it might go. It wasn't a final anything.
That was for 3 Kendrick. That it was a
I
project that had
understand.
been done for 3 Kendrick.
Yes, I understand. But it had the same problem of having to get the pipes out in the water. That's another thing I remembered, and the same amount of area that might be used for the upweller set up within the building. That's the part that I'm thinking of. Now, I want to know, feasibility study, every single piece of information, and we got a lot from our Building Needs Committee about that building, I hope would be conveyed to whoever's doing this. In other words, let's not have amnesia about this, please. We don't want to pay another whatever source, consultant, appraiser, feasibility study maker for something that's already happened. B, how much do you think this is going to cost, a feasibility study?
So right now, I am at the very, very beginning of the process, and I am researching firms to send 3 different requests for proposals to. So that's where we are, like,
Okay.
first step. So I'm researching firms that have experience with upwellers and engineering, and then I need to construct my proposal of what we're looking for with this feasibility study, send it out to the 3 with a deadline, and then review them, and then work with Dan and you to decide on which company we'll hire to conduct the feasibility study.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have
You
a
done?
question.
Okay.
Nancy, while you're there, when we had an upweller, I recall it was tucked in between the L pier and where the gas pump is. But an upweller doesn't get used 365 days a year.
True.
Again, that's a very short window of use. So does that structure get moved and stored or put away? In the past, when we did have an upweller, and that's going back 25 years, it was removed from the area after it had served its purpose and then brought back out the next season, da-da-da-da-da.
So that's one type of upweller called a flupsy, a floating
Right.
upweller system. That's what the town had before. The upweller that we're looking into inside a building is something more along the lines of what Chatham has, what ARC has. So it starts shellfish out in silos inside. So my idea would be with this feasibility study, if we're really looking at economies of scale and usage, because yes, these are used about 6 months, 8 months tops out of the year, like they'll be out of the water by November. What I think I'd like to ask as part of this feasibility study is, okay, let's look at it at the old shellfish shack. Let's look at it at, a structure somewhere on or near the L pier, and to be discussed with Mike, we've already talked about it, somewhere around there. And then, or does it just make more economic sense to have a flupsy? And that is, again, yes, removed. It's part of a slip. It functions underneath a slip. But with that, you have to be careful because of the tides, and it can't go dry. So we need to be dredged for any of this to happen, obviously, and then kind of looking at the dollars and cents of size of shellfish and investment in shellfish seed that you're able to purchase in one system over another, and electricity costs, all of that kind of big picture. It's not a simple, in my mind, it's not a simple feasibility study just for the old shellfish shack. It's about looking at a plan and a program that's going to serve the town in the most economic way in the future.
Comprehensively, yeah.
So it might not be, it might not be the old shellfish shack if it's just, my gosh, so much easier to do a flupsy. But I don't know all the differences yet or the nuances of what a building with an upweller system can offer as opposed to a simple flupsy. And that's where my education is beginning too. And I obviously will work with my colleagues, Johnny and Chris, who have worked with them before, and then even in other towns like Chatham or with the ARC, people who do this all the time and can provide feedback to the department in terms of usage and scale.
Thank you for that, because, I do remember the day when we had that upweller and how it served the town and the local shellfishermen, and if that's all that we could bring back right now, that would be a plus and a positive. But again, the agenda item tonight is the shellfish shack, and I'm putting it back out there that if that in some way can get rehabbed in the future to serve the shellfish department, house your equipment, house a space for you to work out of where it's clean, heated, ventilated, and a nice area to work, then I think that's what we should, be looking at. Part of the problem with 3 Kendrick Ave at town meeting, and not just part of the problem, a big part of the problem, was that people did not want to see the town purchase another building. The argument that they made was, why is that shellfish shack sitting in that condition over there, and why do they want that building over there? That did us more damage than good. We need to take care of the building that we have. If it's back on the table, let's take care of that building. Let's get you in it. let's make it work. You know,
So I think.
the only thing
yeah.
that would have that people really kind of thought with regard to 3 Kendrick Ave, no building at all, open space. Didn't want to see the town have another building because they're not getting maintained.
So I think part of the problem with the Shellfish Shack was that we voted to keep it, then
Left?
I think you were the one who said you didn't want it, you wanted to tear it down, and now we find that the Shellfish is using it for storage and making their cages. So that, we should all think that's going to be another subject, is what do we want to do with the Shellfish Shack? As you said, Dennis just said it's a building, and to get rid of a building that's there, if it's gone forever. So I think we're putting together a plan for the whole harbor in many ways, and certainly the 3 Kendrick Avenue property got us all thinking about what could be. So we can think about what we want, but I think the fact that you're using it and seem to really need it, and we need it down there, so, yeah, if we can vote on another time to repair it all.
So, Janet?
Yes?
Yeah, so I wish for the Shellfish Department everything it needs forever. But in my mind, that building should not be used for anything that doesn't have to do with recreation, for the simple reason that it was a person who gave it to us, said that she didn't want that. And it seems silly now, probably the person wouldn't mind if we came to the person now, if the person was alive. But I don't want this town's government to have the reputation of receiving gifts of land that we very much need and, have use for, and then doing something other than what they're given to us for. That's the reason I'm so, shall we say, hard-ass about this. The other thing is, Janet gave a brief history. This board voted unanimously to
tear it
demolish it after a huge amount of careful, consideration, a lot of information, a lot of work by the Building Needs Committee. And then, as Janet did say, or one of us said, Dennis brought it onto the table again just before he left. And now we're in this state where, having made up our minds, we can't move on. But maybe it would work for a beach sticker shack,
Madam Chair?
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Quickly.
Let's move.
I hear you
move
on the
We've
recreational.
talked about this a lot.
But there is a recreational aspect to Shellfish.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
If it was
Especially-
just
especially
used
with
for
an
producing
upweller.
seed for the recreational fishery, fine.
Yeah.
But it's sticky, and it doesn't feel good to me, and I hate it because it would be nice to be able to use it for anything we wanted to, frankly.
Well, I
Okay,
just want to put your mind at ease that the bags that we built there, the rebar that we had there, we did a lot of sorting of seed there. It was our staging area before we went out to our propagation bed. All of that is destined for the recreational fishery, right? Most of it has gone either to Indian Neck or to Chipman's Cove.
Thank you.
Which is opening on Friday, by the way. Sunday. Sunday, I think it's an 8:42 a.m. tide. Chipman's Cove will open.
Yay.
Thank you.
Okay, yes.
Thank you. It's Judah Hearn. Couple points. Kathleen, thank you for saying what you did. But to move forward, a couple of things. Helen, we bought that land for $6,000, and there was that stipulation, but it was not a gift. I want to be clear about that. Also, in my research, there is a parcel that was included in that piece that has, in my opinion, a cloudy title. So, there's lots that one could go there. As far as a feasibility study, I talked to Johnny, I talked to people in Chatham. It would be great if we had all the money in the world, but we don't. And so I think, Kathleen, like you saying, to be practical, let's move forward. So one thing is about going to code. We need a new appraisal. That appraisal should be reviewed by another appraiser. And if we can get it up to 115, which is what it's assessed at, then we have, 50%, right? You don't have to go to code. So then we can start prioritizing what needs to be done first. Johnny said the heat was a big thing. The mold has been an issue, so let's get that report. Let's just get it going. A feasibility study for an upweller just sounds very expensive to me. And in the end, after talking with Johnny and other people, it just didn't seem like it would be worth the money, at least initially. Like we say, the harbor needs dredging. He's starting the propagation, not starting in earnest. He can just devote his time to that. So let's just do it. Small way.
Okay, anything else? Okay. So, yep, everyone get their ideas for another time when we'll discuss what to do with it and get a plan for the whole harbor that can be worked on in the future. Town fees. Okay.
So I'm just going to bring you a little update here first. Shellfish Department is, the Shellfish Constable is ahead of everybody else because she's got some recommendations already for you on town fees. With the other departments, this was going to be your initial review of the schedule of fees. What I was going to ask each department to do is review their fees and bring recommendations for you at the next meeting. Shellfish Constable has already done that and is already a step ahead. And the other departments will bring it up. And then I'm thinking that if there's any that you see that either you don't agree with them or that you would like them to consider doing, we'll bring that back at the following meeting. But then by the end of the calendar year, we should have this all set, which is in time for the new year, the new calendar year for the fees.
And Suzanne, last year there was a question about changing the beach fees. When do you send out all your information for beach fees? Like January 1st or end of January? Okay, good. I just wanted to know that.
So
Thank you.
Janet, I was talking with Shellfish Constable the other day, and we have a concern about rather large class of part-time residents who are entitled to resident sticker fees, and those are the people that rent sites in the mobile home communities. They don't live there, but they rent the site year-round, they come in the summer, but then they're entitled to resident sticker fees. And each site yields the town $12 a month in a fee. It's a state mandated level fee, $12 per month for each tent site or mobile home site. So I would say we easily sell 400 resident stickers, or 500 resident stickers to that category of people, as well as they qualify for resident shellfish permits. So we're going to bring forth, maybe we could do it together on the same day, because we're going to recommend a new level of sticker and that definition.
Okay. Oh, good.
I would point out that Tom Cole, who normally does our recording, is out on medical leave. And Andrew is doing the recording. So you did not hear Tom go, "Microphone, please," when Suzanne spoke.
Hold on.
Go ahead, Helen.
So, two things. One is, Dan, respectfully, we did get good information from Nancy Chavetta, but it also includes the fact that the Shellfish Advisory Committee has not weighed in on this yet because they couldn't meet. So we don't really have
Approved.
we haven't gotten a definite figure. However, and I'll just say the second thing and then hope to hear you tell me things I don't know. Through you to Suzanne, I don't see how people are either classified as domiciled or not. And if somebody lives in the trailer park, it depends how many days they're there. And the state has now done what the feds do, which is more than 183 days. So if they're there more than 183 days,
They're absolutely residents.
Yeah.
Talking about the people who are down for 8 weeks in the summer.
or not.
But they're entitled at this point to resident status for beach stickers and shellfish permits, and that's something we need to discuss with the board.
Got it. I
Okay.
just don't get why they are, but you'll tell us
I
later.
inherited that. I have no idea why they are.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, they're in or they're out.
I'll bring it to you. You as
Yeah.
a board will make that decision, and then we'll implement it.
Yeah, and in terms of the shellfish permits, that's in our regs. We have a definition of domiciled. And that, if you want to give somebody a permit for shellfishing, it goes to the shellfishing regs and the definition there. Okay?
I'm not quibbling with that.
Yeah, I'm not
happy
cranky.
with this situation because it's
Yeah.
murky, and I want to clear the water.
Yes, and I'm speaking to you with love but concern,
Thank
not
you.
about your
Love is always
input.
good.
Yeah.
Okay, so.
So I just
think
want to
Nancy
say
was gonna
about
present.
the shellfish fee. So the Shellfish Advisory suggested to increase the commercial permit by $40. And then they thought maybe we should initiate a fee for hats in the cove, as you saw in your memo. However, we, as you saw in your memo, have been getting so many donations that I had a couple of boards contact me because I've been putting it up on Facebook. And they said, we feel really uncomfortable charging a fee when we see what an amazing, generous community we have. And the Shellfish Department absolutely agreed and we were already a little concerned about chasing people, going out to Chipman's Cove. Okay, this person has 20 hats, okay, 20 times 2. This person has 7 racks with 10 on each. That's what, and chasing people down for kind of small amounts of money. So the Shellfish Department was already a little skeptical of the implementation, but then when we started to get all this amazing oyster seed donating, it just didn't really make sense. Now, on other times, it's okay for the Shellfish Advisory Board and the Shellfish Department to not be on the same page about stuff. They are advisory. I don't think they're going to have a problem if you decide to not implement those hat fees. And I would suggest that you go with the department's recommendation not to implement those fees. If you really feel like you want them to vote on it again, then when the next Shellfish Advisory Board happens, I'm just trying to cut down on the number of times that I'm here talking about the same things to you.
Okay, yes.
We're sort of, if you look at their charge, it's sensible what you're saying, but I am bound by long affiliation and also experience at this point to always want to vote for them that's absolutely current. So if they've rethought it, they should do it quickly, at a meeting, and it'll be over pretty soon because they're going to meet sometime in the next 3 or 4 years. No, they're going to meet sooner than that. So we'll just hear from them, and then we can do what we want. We can go against their advice. We can go against yours. We can go to Rio de Janeiro. I don't know. Sorry.
So we'll
Getting a little
schedule it on the
it's
same
getting-
night
it's-
as
yeah.
Suzanne and I. We'll schedule it on the same night as Suzanne and I do our other presentation about mobile home
Yeah.
residency fees.
Okay.
Okay.
Just have one comment.
All right, Jude had her hand up first, unless you've got, go ahead.
I would support your recommendation in not charging on the hat fees. I feel that we don't need to nickel and dime our shell fishermen. This town, us, we have to get behind the shellfish fishery in every way that we can. This is how they're going to support their families. They're going to feed their families. It's our second largest industry in the town, and you have my committed support that truly anything that we can do for the Shellfish Department, If you come forward with an upweller and says, this is the best one we should get, that's the best one we'll get. Thank you for all you do.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, go ahead.
Couple things about town use of property. Use of town property. I went to the Board of Health meeting a couple weeks ago to talk about the dumpsters that Max and Seraldi's puts on town property and that they smell. We were talking about where people wait in line for the beach stickers. So they were all in agreement that there should be some sort of understanding between the town and those restaurants and why they use town property for their dumpsters. So I'd like that to be addressed, especially in light of that whole area of 3 Kendrick and, that there are clear boundaries there. Max has just the building, not the parking lot surrounding it, as well as Seraldi's. So I think that should be addressed. And as far as the mobile homes, I would just keep in mind that some people, as we've all said, it's hard to afford to live here. And I know that this has been brought up in the past as far as whether it's good enough, really, to have an address at a mobile home. So I would hope that the board would be very sensitive to that and take it case by case.
Well, I think the question with the mobile homes and tents is not whether they're a domicile or not, it's how long they're there. 8 weeks is not a domicile. That's the question. Yes, things are being discussed about Max and things like that. Anything else about town fees?
Yes, sorry. Can we have that piece of paper that I was referring to earlier, that it's about 2 pages, and it's not these pieces of paper? I know that's really...
So noted.
Really vague.
Yeah, do you know what I'm talking about?
Which one is that?
Yeah. It's the one where our decisions about what certain kinds of things should be, and it's a little bit different, and it was recently thought out and decided in the last few years. And we
Okay.
should all have it if we don't already, especially new people on the board who may
I
not
have no idea what you're talking about.
I'm not sure
Exactly.
either, so,
Yeah,
but I'm sure
What
we
piece of
have it.
paper?
it's current.
Piece of paper.
Dan knows. It's,
Okay.
we'll get it, and all will be
In
revealed.
reference to what?
Fees.
Fees.
Okay, thank you, Helen.
Yeah, use of town property.
Okay, so Economic Vitality and Tourism Fund.
So this one can be very brief. I just wanted to bring it forward to you. There are funds existing in the Blossoms Fest account and the Harbor Fest account. And in talking to people, I've attended a couple of the meetings at the Preservation Hall Economic Vitality Group. I've met with some other people regarding economic vitality. And we've talked about the need for there to be some sort of a fund, possibly a committee down the road that would work on economic vitality and tourism. So with your approval, I was suggesting that we bring this forward at town meeting, which is the only body that can approve a revolving fund, but have a revolving fund for economic vitality and tourism. The concept here would be not that the town has to continue to fund this, but that if we have an event, and we've been talking about a couple of events during Art Week next year, that somehow we find a way to generate income when we have an event, and that just goes back into this fund, so that this fund is somewhat self-sustaining. And, it could accept donations and stuff like that. But the initial idea is to take these monies from Blossom Fest and Harbor Fest, which are just sitting in town accounts now with no activity, and transfer those into a economic vitality and tourism fund. So the only thing I'm asking for you is if you're okay with that, then I'll progress forward with that as bringing it to you as a article for the warrant for next April. So,
Helen?
So let me be sure that I understand. There are 2 funds, I'm repeating back to you, there are 2 funds that are sort of generally ballpark what would be covered under this larger description. So it would be a less restrictive set of criteria for using the monies in that fund.
somewhat, yes.
And where do the monies for the Blossoms and the other ones funds come from now? Where did they originate?
They originated back when we had both of those events. So when we had a Blossoms Fest event in the early spring, and this was before I got here, so
Yeah,
people
yeah.
have told me how it happened. But those monies were generated probably by donations, probably by sales of ads and brochures. But that money has, because those events are no longer active events, that money will just sit there.
How much is it, please?
It's Blossoms Fest has 3,300 in it, and the Harbor Festival account has about 2,300. So it's about 5,600.
Okay, so why should, okay, I want to be, creepy here. A question.
Creepy.
Yeah. Why should the town be organizing any of this?
The town wouldn't necessarily do this, and this would all have to be worked out. But let's just say if we wanted to create an economic vitality committee or a tourism committee, they would then have funds available to do an event, to do something to bring people to town. So we're not looking for the town to necessarily spend money. We're looking for the authorization to a group that has the capability of putting on an event to generate money to bring people into town.
I'm not sure that we need this, but anyway, we can talk about it some other time.
So, wait, so it could also be used for advertisement, brochures, T-shirts. And I do think the town is responsible in ways to support and improve our economic vitality. I know that that group that meets at Pres Hall, I think our librarian's on it too. I'm not positive who's on it. And there's also, it would be a nice committee to funnel ideas through. Somebody came up to me after the dredging committee, the Herring River Committee meeting, and has a great idea, like just how to teach. Justina does SCORE. I mean, it would be a good committee to steer people to with ideas, and then we would be able to help with that. And I think someone or some people from the Chamber of Commerce should be included.
Absolutely.
But it's not like we're funding different things. I mean, the Cultural Council, I believe, came out of this the Blossoms and the Harbor Fest. And that's doing really quite well. So it's another committee. We all need another committee.
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead.
Through you to Dan. I'm all for this. It sounds like a great idea. I don't think we're ready for to commit to an article yet, and I'd be happy to, if it's helpful, to volunteer to do any work on it that you'd like.
That would be great.
Yeah,
That
you've
would
got
be
a few
great.
things on your desk, and then maybe come back with some more fleshed out stuff.
Yeah, I'm not asking for a motion or anything. I'm
Yeah,
just kind
just
of
giving-
Well, you
getting
had
it
mentioned
pitching you
the
the
going.
ideas, so
Yeah.
The article,
like
but
it.
I'm happy
Yeah.
to come in and chat and do whatever work I can on
that
it.
would be great. I'd welcome that from any of you, so.
Kathleen?
We did have an economic development committee, and they went down like a bag of cement because of questionable spending of
Right.
money. So having said that, I think that our Chamber of Commerce has kind of picked up the slack here and, has done a lot with fostering new businesses, Wellfleet Salt Works, I can name a couple. So I think that this would be a great partnership with them. But again, can we do something like this for dredging?
Thank you.
Something like what?
I mean, can we take some of this free-floating money and start an account for maintenance dredging? Because we've got to get that, I don't know.
So, we'll talk after the meeting about that. I don't want to talk about it right now. I'll just tell you something.
I have, and maybe I'll bring this forward too, and I have it a little bit more fleshed out, but I have a few ideas for starting to fund our maintenance dredging account. And so once I've got it a little bit more fleshed out, I'll bring that forward too. But yes, that's on completely at the forefront as well.
We're aware that we may have to do it ourselves. We don't really want to let the funds know that, because then they
Hello?
won't fund us.
Hello?
Yes.
So, and Kathleen has, said very clear things about this, and I'll just tag on to that. The most important thing we can do for our economy, our economic vitality right now, is get the dredging happening. Our harbor. And I have to say, if this gets created, I don't think we need another committee. I think the Chamber of Commerce is doing a great job, and Pres Hall generates a lot of this kind of activity just in what they do. I think that we could use every penny in it, such as it is. It isn't a lot. Everything should go in the direction of a dredging fund, or be used for dredging, even if it's in its own fund. That's all I have to say about it right now.
I will just make one brief comment. As a business owner, I would be disappointed if you were not putting any money into the business community and into tourism. I realize how important dredging is, but one of our goals is to support and increase the opportunities for new businesses in town, and we're not devoting any of our resources to that. I greatly appreciate what the chamber does, but I don't think it's viable to have a membership organization be responsible for your economic vitality.
I
Because
agree.
then you have to be a member to benefit from that.
I agree.
And we also have an excellent select woman who is interested in this area and could really give some great guidance to people. It's not a lot of money, it's not a lot of time, and,
5-star businesswoman.
Well,
yeah.
The $3,000 that's sitting there from the Blossom probably
Yeah.
won't get us dredged. But I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, in other words, whatever happens, for God's sake, let's have it be efficient, because
Right.
I was very
Right.
aware of what the last
Yeah, we all did.
economic group did,
Right.
so.
Well, we're
Okay.
at the start of a long conversation. Or a
Okay, this is getting us all ready for the winter and Springtown meeting. All right, let's move on to dates of select board meetings. My one comment is all those dates seem fine, although Helen brought up the fact last meeting that she wanted to change our schedule.
Well, I wish
So
you
before
would-
we go any further,
Yeah, I just want to run this by you guys. I said at the last meeting, Tuesday is a good day, and the difference between second and fourth Tuesdays and first and third Tuesdays is non-existent. And I have to say that not only would it mean that we could on occasion go to Truro, which, as I said, I've wanted to do a few times, just to hear what they're saying about things, but it would also mean that if they wanted to, they could come to us. And it would also mean, and this is something that's kind of in the wind, but which does exist, the coverage, we have had situations where, let's say, one of the scientists or, Carol Ridley, the project manager for the Herring River Committee, would have gone to both meetings.
okay, so we talked about this last meeting, so
Yeah,
do we want to vote on it? Do we want to postpone to vote on it? Do we want to postpone the approval of the select board meeting for 2019?
This is exactly why we brought it forward
Yeah.
at this time.
Yeah.
And if
So-
you want to make the decision to make it the first and third Tuesdays of the month, if you make a vote and decide that, we'll bring it back to you. We'll change the dates and
Yeah.
bring that back to you. So we just want a direction from you.
I think if we're going to, I'm sorry, I didn't wait for you to say I could talk.
I was looking at you.
I think we should wait and have Jerry here,
I kind of agree too.
Yeah, that's
just
fine.
as, to be nice.
Is that you have time before this comes
Oh,
out,
sure.
right? No
Yeah, we
problem.
usually do this
Okay.
in December, so we've got plenty of time, so.
Yeah.
Okay. And the only other comment is simply, I mean, we meet off schedule sometimes anyway, so, but the only other comment is just not on major Jewish holidays.
Understood.
Yeah, just, please.
And that then brings up the point, it often comes up to have meetings earlier. Other towns, I don't think any town meets at 7 o'clock anymore. They're meeting at 6, 5:30. Is that a conflict for anybody if we moved up the meeting to an earlier time?
I just
Again,
have one comment on that. What happens if we get a,
Executive session.
well, also if we get a great candidate who is
Yeah.
works full-time at the kind of job where seven's
Yeah.
the earliest, or I know Kathleen works, or some of us might work. I mean, that would be my only comment, is the
Right,
employment
well,
thing.
we can, I guess we can change the time when we see who the next, if there is a next selectman. So
Right.
you though, I would think, you don't work on Tuesdays, do you?
The restaurant's closed right now,
Yeah.
Mondays and Tuesdays, but, again, I would like to defer this, until Jerry is
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
Personally, I would like to keep it at 7 o'clock.
Okay.
Because we do often have an executive session that's now starting at 6. If you move our meeting time to 6 and we have an executive session at 5, when do we get dinner?
Well, we also used to have executive sessions after our meetings, so and then it just got where we have a meeting at 10 o'clock and we still have to do an executive session. So that's when we started doing them earlier. So that can be changed too, that can be put on the other side. But okay, we'll wait till Jerry gets back anyhow.
I mean, selfishly, I'd love 6. My only other comment is members of the community who are employed.
Yeah.
Well, as I said, we are the only select board that meets this late.
Are we?
Yeah.
No, Orleans, Chatham, they all.
I don't think so. I think
Yeah.
they start at 5:30 or 6
Meetings at 7.
recently.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I've heard from the community, because really by 7 o'clock, I mean, it depends upon the tide, but people are usually free by 6 too. Just, you know.
Well, selfishly, 6 would be great.
I am completely flexible. I
Good.
don't care.
Good. Okay.
Except I do think that in the future, we should always tailor our executive sessions to what the subject is, right? And if people are going to be coming in from the outside, like lawyers and stuff, to see
Right.
us. You see what I mean? Because
Yeah.
sometimes we might want to start our regular meeting early and then have as long as we need for the executive session.
Yeah,
Because sometimes they're hairy issues, and
we get it. Let's move on.
Yeah.
We're gonna, we don't have to talk
We'll
about
be
this
here all
a
night.
long time.
Good.
Yeah.
yeah, fine.
But that is also to the point that we often have people coming from Boston or so down to our meetings, and
Yeah.
earlier would be better.
Yeah.
Okay, town administrators report.
Just a couple of things on the report. You'll see the last one on the 20th. I was intending to go to the Celebration of Life for Arthur Medici and was not able to make it that, but I understand several of you were able
Yeah.
to go to it, and it was a very moving ceremony, so I'm disappointed I wasn't able to make it to that. I met with the local Cape Cod Access Television Executive Director and talked to her about how we can expand more of our governmental programming here in Wellfleet, and she volunteered to help us train new people when they were coming on board. I reached out to the school committee, and the school committee chair thought it was a great idea to start to have their meetings taped so that people could watch the school committee meetings. So we're going to start reaching out to the community and see if we can find people who are willing to be trained in how to tape a meeting. It'd be a great opportunity for somebody to earn some extra money, you know, depending on how much they want to do it. There's some committees that maybe meet twice a month. School committee, I believe, meets once a month. So, you know, it just would be an opportunity for people to earn some extra money, and we want to keep that in the community as much as possible. But that's where we're trying to head on that and our goal, so.
Good. Kathleen?
Madam Chair, through you to Mr. Hort, several questions, Dan. When do you foresee the electric charging stations being installed?
So I just talked to Lauren with the National Park Service last night during the Cape Cod Rail Trail. We believe that they will be coming in this week. We're hoping that they'll be here next week.
Wow.
Now, so this is the company that's donating the charging stations. Then we have to wait until Eversource installs their
Lines.
yeah, their new I can't think
Conduit?
of it. The new
Not a
Transformer.
generator, transformer.
That's
there
the
we
word I
go.
was looking for. So, and we're expecting that sometime in December or January at the latest. So then we'll have them all ready to go. But we're very close to having them installed, so.
Next question. What was your take on the rail trail meeting last night? Were you pleased with the presentation, comments, so on and so forth?
Amazing turnout. I said to the people from DCR, this community is really involved. I think there were some great ideas that came forward. I mean, I don't know how seriously they take it, but boy, if we could have a traffic light at one of the roads to the beaches, like at LeCount Hollow or something like that. It's just so difficult to make that left-hand turn during the middle of summer. I thought about the gentleman who was on the other side of Route 6
Cove Road.
saying, yeah, and I mean, as soon as he said that, I thought of the white bike. And all of us think of that. How do we make people safer getting from one side to the other?
Well, just to reply to you, I thought the presentation was very well done, and I think this plan is the best plan that I've seen in 10 years.
Great.
It's never going to be a win-win for everybody, but more importantly, right now, the town needs to focus on what the DOT will be bringing us with regard to lights, sight lines, and the widening. And, I agree it would be great to have another light. My third and last question for you, Mr. Hort, are there any chances that we can promote from inside the DPW Assistant Director and even perhaps Radu's position? Any chance that we have help already?
We're sending that out. I mean, we're basically saying to I'm encouraging anybody internally to apply.
Thank you, yeah. That's all I have, Janet,
Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you.
Question?
One other thing I just wanted to say, Kathleen, to what you said is Mass DOT has conceded that a traffic circle is not the right solution there. So hopefully they now focus on how,
really good
that's really
solution.
that squeezing point with the cemetery there. That's really the tight point
That's
for
the
any
point,
bike
yeah.
Janet
travel.
last night say we could just drive right through it.
No, the
No,
really
cut
tight
it off.
point. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Just make a path right through it, she said.
Okay,
Yeah.
so.
Okay, go
So the really tight point is on the west, that is to say, the
ahead.
town.
You know what, it's really getting late. I'm not going to start talking about
Yeah, we're
traffic
concerned.
patterns. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's, yeah.
I am responding, Madam Chair, to
This is-
something that Dan Hort
Okay.
said.
All right, I'm sorry, but.
Yeah, come on, thank you. The really tight spot is the part right along the highway where there is absolutely no room for a bicycle at all,
Right.
next to in at Duck Creek. But then I had a question about the access, Cape Cod Access Television. That's the one that there was the complaint about the scheduling not being stuck to, right? That's the television,
Yes.
yes.
I believe so, yes.
And has that been addressed?
Your concerns.
So that when they say they're going to run something, that's when they run it on their schedule?
I have not talked to them specifically if they've addressed that.
Okay.
I will next time I meet with
Yeah,
them.
because it keeps coming up.
Yep.
And people need
So
to,
you can get their schedule on the computer.
but it's
it's
not
updated.
met.
Well, okay.
Yeah.
I think it is. I'm not sure if, who's ever saying that, but they try, and they don't have a lot of programs, so they just keep kind of looping it all. Okay, any other are we done with the town administrator's report? Future topics for future concerns?
I have a bunch.
Okay.
So the beach administrator, and we all looked at it and thought it was a good idea.
Can we get out early?
Okay. I'm
What'd
going
you
to
say?
start crying.
I am too, so keep going.
Yeah,
Okay.
we need to address whatever is beginning to happen probably already in the media, the way it does for Burning Man, about the mob holiday situation on the beaches that we had. And the beach administrator wanted us to address it after Labor Day. And I would like to have the kind of information that Nantucket was able to get, and to be able to line up, if this is necessary, the state to help us with this so we don't have this situation next year, which is what Nantucket did. However, the thing that I'm really interested in, and I don't know who to assign this to or who would do it within the administration, I want to know what the activity about this is on social media, because what I learned was it happens there, and it happens way, way before the season.
Janet, through you
Yes.
to Helen, I would like to hold off on delving into that right now, because we've just seen the most horrific tragedy on the beach that we've seen in 80 years. How does this change us for next season? Do we get the mobs? I don't know.
I think that if it's...
Do they go to Long Island? I don't know.
They got them there too. So we discussed this through the summer with the police, with the beach, with the fire, with the lifeguards, and with the beachcomber. And Suzanne and the lifeguards especially have all, it's been put into place where, and with the beachcomber, because they know they're in the hot seat in many ways, that when it starts getting crowded, something's got to be done. Or when 20 buses start driving up at 5, they say no more. And that's being addressed hopefully sooner or later by the parking task force. But the lifeguards, especially if we get these phones, so this communication that Chief Pauly presented tonight was talked about in June, that the lifeguard at Cahoon Hollow can say, whoa, we got too many people down here, send some more lifeguards, or, they can then communicate saying there's too many, there's over drinking or too much garbage. So in that sense, it's happened. Aside from scanning, I don't know. Do any of us look at all social media?
No, but I think that this is something that, A, does happen. It happens commonly.
It happens what?
It happens, it's a
Is it
common
commonly-
thing.
Yeah.
And
Actually, the July 4th incident was
more
an anomaly.
spontaneous.
Yeah.
Yes, but Nantucket knows something about this, and Lieutenant Hurley touched on this when we talked at one point in the parking lot. Conversation started about something else, but anyway. But I would just like to see what's happening on social media about it, and that it shouldn't be an informal, let's look at it, maybe one night one of us looks at it, although we could do that too. Because apparently that's how these flash mob situations get organized. And again, somebody, I think, should communicate with Nantucket how that built up and how it happened. And that's the only new thing I'm putting in here, because we did discuss the other matters. This is not something that we worry about so much during the day, and Kathleen was witness to what happened at Newcomb Hollow.
Well, flash mobs are really fun, Helen. They really are.
No, they are fun. It's not a real flash mob, yeah.
Janet, this isn't part of the parking task force?
Not
really?
It kind of crosses over. What Helen's saying is she wants to stop it before it begins. And I don't know who you ask to monitor this stuff. I'm just not up on it.
Well, can it go on the agenda?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Having heard your discussion, I think maybe I'll ask Public Safety and the beach administrator to get together, and we'll talk about what we think we should do and bring that forward to you.
Can do.
I'll tell you, so after the microphones are off, because it's about the secret ponds of Wellfleet, I'll tell you about that. But I'm not going to say it on the
Thank you, Jan.
on the TV.
Can't give it all away.
Nope.
So we're talking about Dan having some conversations before we put this on the agenda?
Yeah.
Yeah, just to find out more.
I share your concern, and I agree we should discuss it.
But
And
I know that Suzanne is,
Yeah,
and the beachcomber does not want another
no.
bad publicity and problems, and that nor do the lifeguards, so,
So the second
or the
thing,
police.
which came up earlier for the future concerns, so Chief Fissette said, oh, how about another intersection, Route 6 and, Main Street, East Main Street hearing. I would like to wait until we get further information from the DOR. Is there more information?
No, Commercial and Bank Street.
That-
Yeah, down
Has
by,
nothing to do
down
with
by
Route
the,
6.
Wait a minute.
down by,
Commercial and Bank Street,
so as you go down Bank Street,
in front of the
Oh, a
Masonic
hearing,
Lodge.
Where the old-
a hearing
where the old
about
water trough
that.
is.
Putting a
Yeah.
yield sign in,
Yeah.
a wider crosswalk,
Thank you.
slow,
nothing to do with
something.
Route
So,
6.
four-part brain.
Yeah,
Good that part of this four-part brain.
my brain's always on.
Okay, so anything
Is
else?
that good?
No, yes,
All right,
no.
okay. Anything on correspondence?
We've all seen the correspondence from the bookstore, and it sounds, Dan, like you're handling that great.
Yes,
Thank you.
yeah, we're addressing it
Good.
right now.
Minutes?
Okay, so, some amendments. The only one that I actually looked at the video of carefully because the word litigation came up was on page 2, under the Wellfleet Spirits Shoppe Incorporated. And right at the beginning, it should, one amendment says, "It was confirmed that the application with all required information had been received by the town but had not been included in the Selectboard packet." And 3 lines down, council said that the corporate vote, the corporations, that's a typo, vote to remove Scally as manager was illegitimate because, comma, at the time, those present were not authorized, as per the corporation's bylaws, to make that vote. And on page 3, still on the same, subject, it's how talking, the line starts, purview, and that he agrees with Bacon that they needed a manager on the premises, and that normally the board doesn't ask to see a corporation's bylaws. Further down the page 3, under business. Last 2 lines before the motion, Bacon said Goss Lane is a small paved way in a development that is wide enough and has been maintained so as to meet our policy's requirements. Our policies, I have to correct my own amendments. On page 4, there's just one. Under the discussion on Cape Light Compact, the thickest paragraph there, second line from the bottom. This option would allow the company to adjust a thermostat from a remote location. Strike to keep track of warmer and colder times. That was a scary fact. Page 5. After, under the bold and E, approval of FY 202 annual budget, in that paragraph, the last 2 lines, second to last line, warrant, before it was printed, period. That's what Roger said. Wilson agreed with Putnam and added that all appropriate boards and committees should be asked to weigh in. I would never say all boards and committees. Okay, farther down the page, on page 5, under H, selection of an attorney for Herring River project restoration. Wilson said that she got the names of 2 other law firms and that she is unsure if we chose to work with the McGregor-Laguerre firm, whether we would be getting the principal. And Dan, I want to check this with you on the last part of that paragraph. My memory is that you had spoken with Laguerre. No, you had spoken with McGregor. Okay, then I got that wrong, and that's why I'm checking it. Okay. 6th page, almost done. Down at the bottom, under topics for future discussion. And this is what we just did. Wilson would like to have the select board meeting dates be on the 1st and 3rd Tuesday of the month, rather than the 2nd and 3rd Tuesday of, so that the select board blah, blah, blah. And then down at the bottom, Wilson would also like to meet with the Board of Cemetery Commissioners to expedite a green burial option in the town's cemeteries. And that's it.
Did we say expedite?
I didn't say expedite.
No.
Oh, wait, well, I didn't say expedite.
No.
I don't think it was expedite.
Yeah. No, yes, expedite, having a green, to have it happen faster. I did say that.
Okay.
Yeah, so we, that was right. Okay, that's it.
Okay, can I have a motion, please, to accept the minutes as corrected?
I
and
move
amended?
that we approve the minutes of Tuesday, October 9th, 2018, as amended.
Second?
All in favor? Thank you. Now, how about the executive session?
We don't have those.
We don't have one, but we should be having one. Heh,
You vote on those in executive session.
Yeah.
yeah.
I move to
I
adjourn.
must have grabbed these from before.
Okay.
Is there a second to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor? Thank you.
No, we got some stuff